Hello and welcome everyone to Risen Esports Champions League. The season has been winding down to the final four teams, but finals only has room for two teams, and today two semifinals battles will take place to determine what our final showdown is going to be next week. To battle tonight, it's going to be the Battle of the Juggernauts in a best-of-5 series, as collegiate powerhouse Maryville University looks to take on one of North American amateurs' finest in Radiance. I'm your caster today, Eric Deserex Beltran, followed by my co-caster, the man looking to show up Prussian's caster rankings. It is Dean Rebel Fox. Merrick, how you doing today, brother?
Doing fantastic. I've been up all day. I've been ready for this series, and I'm excited to get into this one for the second time this week, actually.
Yeah, these teams have been going at it. I mean, well, first of all, we do have to point out, these are very, very established brands when it comes to the esports scene. I mean, Radiance, owned by LoL veteran High, they bursted onto the scene in 2019. They've just been crushing it, did have some roster changes in 2020, and now trying to find their way back to that success.
Yeah, and then on the other side, you of course have Maryville. You already made mention, one of the most accomplished college squads. They've won national championships. They've gone international and taken it all the way to the very end. This is one of the most popular squads I know coming into the split, and the expectations on these two teams have actually never been higher than they are right now.
Yeah, and of course, what we were saying just a moment ago, they have been battling all over the Scouting Ground circuit. I mean, just this week, we've had these two teams go at it twice, even.
Yeah, over in UPL, Radiance ended up taking a 2-1, which was a fantastic series, which they reverse swept. And then, of course, one of the most exciting series I've ever had the pleasure of being a part of over in Focus Championship, the semifinal, where it was Maryville reverse sweeping, of course, Radiance in that best-of-5 with the final 3 games going their way. These two teams, they love to play back and forth. They certainly like to make it exciting, at least.
Yeah, and it's definitely going to be exciting. And now getting on to Risen Esports and our playoffs bracket. Of course, Radiance, they did have that easy week off as Wildcard did forfeit, disqualified from the Scouting Ground circuit. Maryville, on the other hand, they had a war they had to go through with another powerhouse, and that was Supernova.
Yeah, Supernova has not made their lives easy toward the end of the season either. They actually beat them over in Focus, and then, of course, they lost here in Risen. So, again, back and forth between some of these teams has been phenomenal, and the road for any of them has just been kind of rough, and it's been laid with losses and wins anywhere. But fantastic performance from Maryville to be able to get over their competition and Supernova to make it this far in the Risen Championship Series.
Yeah, and now getting into today's matchup, the two teams playing today, Maryville, Radiance, a lot of high-octane power. We got to start breaking down these teams, starting off with Maryville. Of course, Niles in the top lane, Iconic in the jungle, Wolf mid lane, ADC Value, and support Shady. They've been a pretty solid squad altogether.
That they have. I think maybe the expectations coming into the season were super high for them, and they've at minimum hit the bottom threshold, but I think there's still plenty of room for them to grow. And they win games off of a lot of macro, off of a lot of individual talent from their players, but that's what they do best, is they're able to take fights, and they're able to make map rotations much better than any other team, and that's where their success has really come from for the most part.
And then over, you have the more traditional style of Radiance. Of course, in the top lane, Engo, jungle, Avi, mid lane, Young, and ADC support duo going to be Andy Bendy and JN Cow. And the thing about these two teams is they play very, very different styles when it comes to each lane and each role. Breaking down those matchups, starting off in the top lane, Engo versus Niles, for example. You have Engo, very high KDA top lane player, and Niles, one of the legends of North American Amateur, returns old wallpaper even.
Good time. Yeah, what was it he used to say? I think Hyper likes to say it now. I'm not even going to repeat it out of fear of being memed all over the place. But the two of them have gone back and forth in the top lane. And Go actually seems to have a pretty good idea of what he wants to do in the laning phase, which is to take something dominant, play it into Niles, and try to shut him down by taking away anything he wants to scale with. You're not going to see him on Gangplank anytime this series because they've banned it out, I think, 8 times over the last few weeks, over the few games that they've played. So Engo likes to take the volley bear. He likes to take all the laning pressure he can and just try to put Niles in the dirt as fast as possible.
Yeah, and now moving on to the jungle role, Iconic versus Avi. I mean, both of these players, we've seen them a lot when it comes to both of these scenes. Avi's been in the collegiate scene for a long time, used to play in UCI as well. He tends to be someone who is extremely proactive in the early game, and that is going to be something Radiance want to hinge on. Meanwhile, Iconic likes to go for the more jungle carry role with the Graves and Kindred.
Yeah, you have the Gauge, the Kindred, and when you get that early damage off, especially when Iconic gets rolling in a game, it's really hard to get him to stop. Like, once the momentum is there, it's there. The thing with Avi is that he never necessarily has to play that kind of huge carry role, play one of these big damage dealers. His lanes are immaculate. If he plays to those lanes and ganks as much as he can, tries to get the map control for them, they will take over the game most of the time, which is kind of the goal here for Avi. Whereas Iconic, I mean, he's looking to put pressure onto Avi and try to get his lanes out of that laning phase so they can play that macro style.
And then, of course, the juicy matchup is going to be Wolf versus Young in the mid lane. A very, again, different styles coming in here. You do have someone like Young who works phenomenally well in those assassin burst mages, but starts to struggle when he starts to play something that scales past that 30-minute point.
I'm super excited because I really want to know if we get another salty run back, because we've seen multiple times now where Young mid comes back to something like the LeBlanc, and then of course it's just completely negated by the mid lane of Wolfie, whether he's playing Syndra or some other pick. It's been hilarious to watch just how amazing of a LeBlanc we've seen on the side of Radiance with Young mid just get completely shut out somehow by Maryville's mid laner.
Yeah, and then in the bot lane, Value and Shady versus Andy, Benny, and Cow. And that's an interesting matchup as well, because over on Value and Shady, you have Shady, who likes to roam around a lot more, leave Value in that solo lane with the champion like Ezreal, versus Andy, Bendy, and Cow, who prefer to just play a safe, very traditional lane, and then eventually start winning off once they transfer that to the mid game.
Andy Bendy takes a lot of the resources from Radiance, and I think there's a good reason why. Is that his laning phase is dominant, his team fighting is really good, and he loves to play things that do really well in the late game kind of stage of the game. Now, Iconic, or my apologies, Value on the opposite side, also loves to play late game carries, doesn't have the same kind of laning pressure that you've got. So that's why you see Shady get out of the map, pair up with Iconic, try to take over from there, because usually Value's not the type that's going to play for the laning phase. He's probably going to be playing for late game.
Yeah, now we are getting into Champion Select right now. Maryville University versus Radiance. The expectations set onto the table. Bans already fired away. Wukong, Karthus, Volibear, Gangplank, Karma, and Nautilus all taken off the map. Maryville University crutching straight to that Graves. That's one of the picks we were expecting to be really focused on.
Yeah, Iconic pretty much first picks this every single time that it's available on blue side here. That's completely shocking to see. The Lee Sin is actually also really good for Avi. I think it sets up lanes really well. I do want to say the Kale almost might be a call like to the last week when they blind picked it, and unfortunately they lost against Supernova, and they actually did it into Radiance, a blind pick as well, and it ended up having success. So Maryville, a little call back to one of the champions we've seen them run in the previous weeks.
Yeah, so Syndra and Lee Sin both going to be locked in. That control mage Syndra, definitely something that's going to be pretty nice to have in this matchup versus Wolf, because that's something you tend to see Wolf go more than anything else for that control mage type style. So you're definitely going to have that skill matchup going on in the mid lane as Aphelios gets locked in for Maryville, and of course the iconic, not iconic as in the player, but LeBlanc getting locked in.
Oh my goodness. So Maryville, whenever the Graves is available, you always take it first, but every single other rotation, in any other iteration of this team, if Graves is gone, Syndra comes first, because that is one of the best champions that Wolfie's played. And last week, the response from Radiance was to take the LeBlanc, and now we get the reverse of this matchup. I'm super excited to see what Wolfie can do up against young mid Syndra.
Yeah, and to be fair, Wolfie is a good LeBlanc as well, so you can't put him out on that. It's definitely going to be an interesting matchup to see as phase 1 of the draft and now completed. Malphite getting banned away. Still waiting for bans out of Maryville University, but now you're starting to see with the Jace locked in as well. Engo loves that Jace. It's something he's been playing a lot as of recently in a lot of these competitive matches, and it's something that works really well when he wants to be that high KDA player.
Absolutely. Interesting bans as well, because I don't know how much Niles actually plays the Malphite. I know Malphite typically gets banned out when you're looking at Wukong, but it's not terrible into the Jace to just kind of just destroy the laning phase essentially for Jace and to get through the team fighting phase, which is where the real impact comes through. This does leave a ward up, however, which is something he loves to go to. It's a little curious on my mind, but we'll see if they actually want to go to something like that.
Niles has been playing a lot of Ornn over on that top side, and typically Niles, you tend to see him go for like more Ravenous Hydra split pushers, the type of 1-3-1 type setup, but now he's been kind of falling back towards that tank role, just being supportive of the entire team nowadays.
Yeah, he's made a name for himself almost being this team fighting player rather than making his own individual contributions through side lane type plays. Instead, opting more for the team fighting tanks, the team fighting champions, things of that sort, to express his skill there. And he's very good at those as well. But again, that it's outside of what we would expect his calling card to be, as it might be.
Yeah, and then the Bard getting locked in, a very interesting pick to see because that's usually something we see more, I believe, out of Shady than anything else. Something that's more of a roam-heavy support. Cal likes to stay with his ADC more than often than not.
Yeah, curious to see. I know last week when he was trying to respond to what Shady could do out of the support role, he was taking something like Rakan, which was actually doing a relatively decent job at mitigating some of the roam pressure. And I guess Bard is what you were working on over the course of the week after you've learned all of the strategies coming in from Maryville, is to have something that's good for the laning phase and also good outside of the laning phase.
And this is another pick that we're expecting to be highly contested as well, this Thresh pick, because it works well in both playstyles of Cow and Shady. Shady, if he wants to go for the roams, Cow, if he just wants to defend his ADC.
Yeah, I've seen Shady play this Thresh so many times, and honestly, the hook looks like a targeted ability sometimes. His ability to hit it between minions, outside the lane phase, just in absolutely ridiculous situations is amazing. I'm curious what Radiance goes to. It should be a bot laner. Yeah, okay, this is going to be the Jhin locked in.
Yeah, so the Jhin. I actually haven't seen the Jhin in quite some time. We've been stuck in this meta of Ezreal's, Aphelios's, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to take that Jhin back over to the bottom lane.
It's interesting because it's popped up very recently, especially within Scouting Ground circuit as a response to a couple of different things. The big one, for example, is just setup for that bottom lane. So when you don't get your hands on something like Ashe or like Varus that has really good utility, the setup for additional CC comes from Jhin, with that W coming in is a really big thing. Not to mention, the way that Maryville used the Jhin last week was, as a normal ADC, it's hard to out-damage a LeBlanc when she simply jumps in and hits you with her abilities and her body, basically, that immediately leaves. Jin's one of the few ADCs where if you get Q auto-attack out, that's a really big chunk of damage. It's the instantaneous burst from Jhin that makes it a little bit scarier for LeBlanc to jump in.
And getting into these matchups as a whole, now that we have both compositions really locked in, starting with the bot lane more than anything else, because it's one that really starts to interest me in the way it's going to play out. I mean, you have the Jhin and Bard combo. There's a lot of damage in that combo. There's a lot of potential to roam as well. And that's something I definitely want to see out of Maryville University. You want to see those proactive early plays, especially when you have something as aggressive as the Lee Sin. Bard and Lee Sin roams can be deadly to the enemy jungler.
Yeah, when you've got the combination of Avi and of course Cow, who are really, really talented players on very high damage champions to pair, you're going to be bound for some good things. The one problem I do foresee is that there's a relative lack of CC that's just definite. So you've got Syndra Stun, you got Jhin W, and you've got Bard Q, you got Lee Sin Kick, you got like Jace E when he's in Hammer Forward, like that's great, but nothing is like solidified, and none of it's really that big in terms of AoE outside of the Syndra Stun. It's going to be difficult to get a really big team fight going in your fashion without a massive kick from Lee Sin or a great Bard ultimate from Cow.
Well, that's the thing. You can't expect Radiance to go too much for team fights. You should expect them to go for early game to mid game skirmishes, go for the picks, play the map vision. Scatter the Weak is excellent at setting up picks, especially for a Lee Sin to land that sonic wave and get that kick that you were talking about. But as you get towards the late game, you start to favor Maryville University more and more.
You do. I mean, you got the Aphelios for late game up against the likes of the Syndra. And yes, you've got really good pressure in things like Jhin and Bard and Jace who can put some pressure on Aphelios from a while away. But if you look at this composition holistically, I mean, LeBlanc's got dashes, Graves got dashes, Ornn has the ability to not be CC'd, and Aphelios has the Thresh Lantern. So you have plenty of ways to reposition every single member of the team. And so there's good skill expression for Maryville to be able to avoid a lot of this stuff. And I do think if they get out of their laning phase, it will be relatively easy since they've got the Ornn, they've got the Thresh, they've got the really good Aphelios Graves combination for team fighting. They should be capable of at least looking like the easier composition on paper to play.
Most definitely. We're going to see how this plays out. But remember, if you're filling up on your luck, be sure to bet a Travie Buck over in our Twitch chat on who you think is going to win this matchup of Maryville University versus Radiance. Before we throw this over to break, remember, this is a semifinals matchup. We got another one going on right now. Be sure to check LBGN versus Frostfire over on twitch.tv/risen_esports2. Be sure to give Cubby and Lemon some of our love. We're going to be right back as we head on to the Rift with more Risen Esports action. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Risen Esports Champions League, Maryville University versus Radiance. Our team's hitting the Rift right now, and definitely a juicy match right here. Going to be a best-of-5 matchup. These teams, we talked about it earlier, they've gone at it all over the scouting ground circuit, and it's just another day on the Rift for them.
Super excited to see what they bring today, because again, their last two series have been so ridiculously spicy, and you already get some adaptation from both sides. You get to see the Jhin, you get to see the swap of the LeBlanc Syndra matchup. You get Ingo playing Jace into the Jace player himself. You get really solid plot lines for this game number 1 here.
Yeah, looking over at Radiance, you want to keep a close eye on their tempo more than anything else, because a little bit of a support fight going on here, some supportal combat, but nothing too much going to be exchanged as Wolf shows over just to deter any more engagements that might happen. But yeah, no fight to be seen. That's what was being said earlier. It's an early game focus for Radiance. They want to ride this out because you don't want to get towards the team fighting phase of Maryville University when Niles is on that Ornn and Shady's on that Thresh.
Yeah, I'm really terrified now because I now see that Young Mid has gotten 3 Bard health packs. Typically, you see 2 come out because of the mana of the cow. Fortunately, was able to get both of his chimes to be able to spawn on the right side of the map, and so he drops 3 health packs there for Young Mid to be able to trade as aggressively as he wants for absolutely no avail here for Wolfie. It feels really bad as the LeBlanc to have to play against basically an entire health pot and a half there, sitting in the mid lane for Young Mid.
Yeah, you got to fight the control mage. You got to fight a mage with a control mage. There we go. That's the word I was trying to say there. But yeah, it's definitely going to work well for Young's advantage as fight going on. More supportal combat and aggressive exchanges going on from this Bard. Expect to see a lot of it because that's kind of Bard's forte right there. You want to get that auto attack harassment and just slowly dwindle them down and buff.
Certainly working to Cal's advantage to this point. It helps with the Guardian and that heal pack as well, because you can take really aggressive trades and still come out very heavily on top. I do want to point out both junglers actually started on the same side on their blue side and just full cleared blue side, which isn't something you always see. You usually see at least 1 or 2 junglers sometimes do this over the course of the series, but to see both of them do that in game number 1 here, end up on the red side, potentially going to gank, and then finishing out their jungle routes, pretty interesting stuff. I'm curious if Avi wants to hit top or mid in the same way that Graves wants to hit bot or mid in the same way.
Yeah, only clearing out his Raptors right now, and already the roams coming out of Andy Bendy and Cow. They're going to be the wiser to this one and head over to where Scuttle is, put a ward there just to spot out where Iconic's going to be. And they're predicting that quite beautifully right now, but both junglers are going to be collapsing over towards the mid lane. Aviv feels this, waiting for him to show up. Iconic going to show up. A lot of damage going in. The Ignite's there over the wall, looking to jump in and protect his teammate. There comes the Sonic Wave, Resonating Strike. It's going to be first blood, mid lane for mid lane.
Good little trade there between the two, and of course first blood going the way of Iconic. Really like that play. Again, both junglers ended up with red to be able to end their clear, which is a really good ganking tool on both their teams. And Avi thankfully hitting that Q and then finding the W4 to be able to give him the space to finish up after Wolfie had used the second proc of Distortion. Really well played there from Avi to get a return kill against the likes of LeBlanc with all of that mobility.
And now roaming back up once again, Andy, Bendy, and Cow. They're playing this game where they just push the wave in, get all that priority going, and then move over towards the Scuttle, get their vision, and just try and harass Iconic. You can see it happening. Iconic's now on the run in a very rough spot. Keep in mind, he doesn't have flash, so it's very hard for him to be able to escape this. And that's what you're going to see when you see members right there surrounding him. The tick of the red buff will do the deed as a V grabs the kill.
I really thought he was actually getting out there. Some heroics from Shady, getting that Lantern into just the perfect position. And I know Value had burnt the heal. I thought maybe he had a chance of living there, but unfortunately ticks down to that red buff as you had said. And now Avi has control of this bottom side. The Scuttle Crab's going to be his after taking top side. Dragon priority probably going to go their way as long as Andy, Bendy, and Cow get to get back here. Really solid stuff coming out from the side of Radiance, already putting Iconic in the dirt as best as possible.
Yeah, 4 minutes in and he's already been involved in 2 kills. So it's a good display coming out of a V in the early game. The display you really need from a Lee Sin like this. You need to start seeing some action coming out of Iconic, who's definitely been doing all right thus far. It's just a rough spot when you have to go against this Lee Sin matchup and you don't have any priority towards the bottom lane where you have that roaming Bard who wants to constantly be in your jungle.
And what's interesting is, again, last week, or earlier this week when we saw this matchup come through for Maryville versus Radiance, it was often obvious supporting the lanes in their endeavors, and Iconic was the one that kind of had the winning matchup in the jungle, and he was dominating that with things like the Olaf. But in this one, it seems like the lanes have now been set up so that they can have push priority, and then they can support Avi when he invades for Iconic. Iconic was a big reason why Maryville ended up getting that reverse sweep, and so Radiance are coming out full throttle today in their aggression against it.
Yeah, you can see them setting up over towards the spot side, trying to set up for the Drake. Well, Iconic around the mid lane, looking to find another gank onto Young. There is a ward there, so he won't be spotted out. Scatter the Weak will not stop too much damage from coming in, but here comes the teleport. And Go looking to show up in the mid lane, only to deter the gank that was going on, but it's actually going to cause a pincer movement right here. Wolf too far out, caught out. Sonic Wave, resonating strike over the wall. Will find a kill. Andy Bendy starting to run low in the bot lane. Will flash away and score the kill. Able to pick up 3 so far is Radiance. Now a little bit more supportal combat, but props over to Radiance, able to grab those 3 kills, only losing Andy Bendy in the process.
Great teleport coming in from Engo to pinch that bot side of the map, as you had pointed out with that fantastic pincher move. And then, of course, the win in the bot scene. That flash from Andy Bendy unfortunately stole a kill away from Value because he couldn't get that last auto attack off before the ward had gone down. Really unfortunate stuff here coming out already early for Radiance, or my apologies, for Maryville. And Radiance just commanding the map. They are not having any of this nonsense where Maryville's going to be able to group up faster. They're going to be able to take the lane advantages. No, they're just commanding everything in the moment.
Yeah, and it's so smart with the way they're playing it. They're still playing to that style we were saying about shoving the bot lane and then doing that assistance over towards the V, following him around, and go with a beautiful teleport into that pincer movement. It's working wonders for Radiance in their early game composition.
It's a new look here for Radiance, who, honestly, they've been adapting so well in this later game season. They have a lot better picks in terms of a lot of teams that I've seen. They're working on new stuff. They're constantly adapting their strategy. I really love the way that Radiance has just been making these changes over and over again. And since they've got so many carries on their team, it makes them so much more dangerous because you have no idea in any game how to set it up and who they're trying to get ready. In this one, it's Avi who's getting a lot of the support, and certainly it's the great game plan already.
Scatter the Weak goes out. The return of damage onto Wolf, who goes down to the Ignite. Young turns that completely on its head, and it's not done just yet because over in the bot lane, burning the flash of value will be Cal. In the top lane, Call the Forge God underneath the tower. Tee up right there for Engo as he looks to try and finish the job, just barely picking up the kill. The stars are lining up for Radiance right now as they're just picking up kill after kill in their solo lanes.
Getting bullied across the map is Maryville right now. Bottom lane, Value almost goes down to an ultimate from Andy Bendy. Top lane, a little bit more of a dive, probably over-aggression from Niles more than anything. But either way, every little thing on the map going the way of Radiance at the moment. And I don't know exactly how Maryville just kind of pulls off right here, because it seems like Young Mid is commanding this matchup. Avi has a massive advantage in the jungle. And now Engo even. He got a kill from that earlier play, gets a second kill, and has his Mana Mune completed as well. So the scaling on Jace is not going to be limited anytime soon.
It's looking great for Radiance at this stage of the game. A V able to grab that Rift Herald, be another juicy influx of gold as we still have quite a while on these turret plates. Shady and Value all meanwhile try to play the long game. They're trying to be very sneaky. They did do that sidestep. They're not going to be spotted out just yet. Here comes the death sentence. It's going to be onto a minion only to get closer to Cow, but Iconic can't get close enough to bring the damage to make that a successful gank. Instead, forced to back out.
The limited range right here from Graves, I think, is hurting them a little bit. The same with LeBlanc, where LeBlanc has, kind of limited range as well. Only really Aphelios and then, of course, the Ornn have a really long range ability to fighting of any kind, and that's pretty much limited only to Ornn ultimates. So they're relying on Value to be a lot of their range, and you're fighting into the likes of Bard and Syndra and Jhin, and even the likes of Jace, and that makes it really, really tough. You have to play from such a short distance compared to those champions that it's not easy to get in top of them.
Yeah, so now Radiance controlling the map thus far, having a great impact on the Rift, having about a 2k gold lead. Going 9 minutes into this game and already looking for a rotation over towards the top side. It looks like they want to set up a tower dive onto Niles as Engo continues pushing in the lane.
Shady's already up here trying to make some sort of counterplay happen, making sure that Avi can't just freely drop the Rift Herald up top lane, dive him, and get that kill. And it looks like it was actually sniffed out by Radiance as well. They get a little bit of vision control back in their top side jungle, free up Engo to walk in to get a little bit more. And yeah, you can be a bit patient with this play. Here's Avi.
Over the wall with the distortion, but only to let him know, I know you're hiding in that bush. Get out of my lane, damn it.
Yeah, it's crazy because Radiance is expressing their power not just through like killing people on the map, but also through all this control of the map. And now even look, they've added Cow into their ranks as well, so they turned from a 3v3 to a 3v4 after the dive potential was already set up.
Oh man, it's the Goon Squad looking to show up over in the top lane, and there's not a thing Niles can do about it. Falling to Engo, Shelly just stopping on the minions, but Young gets pushed in. Fortunately does have the flash to be able to survive. Teleport's going to be burnt. Shelly, unfortunately, unable to get towards the tower. Not going to be able to pick up those plates.
The dive was fantastic. I love the fact that they committed so many resources. They're willing to put Andy Bendy in the solo lane against Value, even though this isn't a spectacular matchup necessarily for the Jhin. We'll see that here. The heal is burnt to be able to get out of that situation. But of course, they dropped the Rift Herald so prematurely. It got caught by those poor minions, and so they didn't get the collapse of the tower that they wanted, despite the really good dive.
Yeah, unlucky. Unlucky to say the least. But they get the kill nonetheless onto Niles once again. And now it looks like they're setting up over towards this dragon side. Going to take Shelly. Not Shelly, excuse me, the Rift Scuttle. There we go. And set up for the Cloud Drake that's going to be spawning quite soon.
That's a really rough situation.
Ooh, Cow. Gotta be careful there. Will not land the Cosmic Binding. Looking to flash forward. Cow, what are you doing, my friend? Gets picked off by Value. Now a V looking to join this. Fight Young will be able to score one kill. Another one might be going over as Wolf is able to just flash out, but a V will finish off the job, I believe, with the tick of the red buff once again. Something along those lines. Still looking good for Radiance as they were only losing one. That is the support. They picked up the mid lane as well as the ADC.
Radiance is not letting anything on the map go. They've got 3, 4, 5 members there every single time. I think the only pure 2v2 we've seen throughout the game was the one in mid lane between mid and jungles, pretty much first play of the entire game, and then bot lane, the fight between Value and Shady and Andy, Bendy, and Cow. And outside of that, Radiance always has the numbers advantage somehow. It is incredible to see them constantly moving out of their lane, constantly putting the wards forward to make sure they're the ones that are first to the play. And it's netted them 7 kills, a massive little gold advantage, about 4,000 or 5,000 here at the early game, and now 2 dragons also to boot.
And it's denying Maryville from playing the style they wanted to. They wanted to have some early game impact that leads to a team fighting phase that's absolutely destructive. Now that they're losing this early game, it's looking absolutely devastating for them as Radiance are just snowballing straight to the win.
Their early game wasn't ever spectacular, and they had things to play around, not necessarily something that was going to smash, but they had things like the Thresh, they had things like the LeBlanc that can generate some early plays, and none of that's gone their way. But even worse, typically Maryville is capable of sandbagging, making sure their lanes don't do too poorly, or giving up resources in some avail. But in this game, they've just been completely bled out here by the side of Radiance, which is really more so speaking to the level of Radiance's ability to plan this early game out and know what they need to do to prevent themselves from falling from a dominant team fighting competition.
So lane swap coming in. Shelly gonna hit the rift in about another minute. You can see a V trying to come over here as well. That sentence gonna go wide for the time being, but a lot of pressure finally coming back out from Value and Shady. You're seeing they're starting to get some control in that lane.
Yeah, the DPS coming out from something like an Aphelios is always going to be higher than a Jhin, at least for the early stage of the game. When the 700, 800 AD comes out, oh my goodness, that
beautiful tempered bait going straight after Shady, who's going to put into that sentence. Will go golden. Cow able to hop away and going golden, bought him enough time to be able to stay alive.
So the ultimate comes out from Cal immediately, which hits both of them, which I think was gorgeous. But then immediately, I think they were curious about who to engage onto, whether to go onto Value or go onto Shady. And they committed to Shady because they knew his flash was down. But I don't think that was communicated fast enough to Cal to land a Q there. So he doesn't end up getting a stun, ends up stalling the play a little bit longer than you would have wanted. And then, of course, the stopwatch from Shady really putting the end to that play coming through as Value trades a bunch of damage with that onslaught onto Hobby.
Yeah, but with that pressure, it's going to force the recall out of Value, which means it's going to be a little bit of alone time. Andy Bendy with his tower. Tower plates did fall down, but the important thing is Radiance still has control over this top side of the map. They've been keen on grabbing these neutral objectives, and Shelly has just hit the map again.
And they should have complete priority over topside, because Jhin should be able to grab this tower pretty freely. They're actually moving Value down the map, despite that fact that Rift Herald is here because of the invade coming out. Now, best case scenario, they're able to get Engo, but they can't even find any pressure on him. I want to see them rotate up immediately because they know where Engo and Cow are, but so far they're just content on staying on this bottom side of the map and letting Avi free take that Rift Herald on top side while Jhin just grabs the tower as well.
Yeah, Andy Bendy able to pick up solo gold on that tower. Not just the tower, but Shelly being started up by a V. It's gonna be a lot picked up for Radiance, and with no real risk to it.
Yeah, Radiance is just out-rotating pretty much across the map. This is one of the rare instances where it looks like Maryville is just getting completely out-macroed across the map, as well as, you know, giving up a little bit of individual gold across the map as well in some of the single plays. It's astonishing, almost. It's a very rare thing to see a team play a lot faster or a lot more mechanical in terms of their map pressure than Maryville, but certainly Radiance has had their card all day so far.
And with the Rift Herald picked up, we got another minute 18 before the Mountain Drake hits the Rift as well. And this is a point where Maryville needs to start trying to utilize some sort of team fight, some sort of pick with either the Ornn or the Thresh. Just try and get some death sentence up there because they can't keep conceding these neutral objectives. We're almost at Dragon Soul point this early.
I mean, 16 minutes in the game, if you're giving up Dragon Soul, or you're giving up a Dragon Soul point here, and you don't have at least the goal to compare after the next 5 minutes for the team fight, you're going to be in a really horrible situation, because not only is the Dragon Soul going to be on the table potentially as a loss, but this forces your motion there. And when you've got something like, they don't have a great Baron taking composition, but they can pressure towers, they can pressure Baron if they really want to, and they can pull their attention away, because they have 3 dragons in a row that Maryville have to respond to, otherwise you're losing a massive amount of power, and unfortunately that's good. It's looking like it's going to be the case with the Rift Herald now dropping mid lane.
Yeah, and that's off of the response that you saw, seeing that Iconic was over towards that top side. Engo going straight after Iconic, though, wants to finish the job in the 1v1 kill. Iconic trying to walk away, gets autoed by Engo and falls. That's your jungler down, and that's going to be Dragon Soul point uncontested for Radiance.
This is so like I see, this is exactly honestly what Radiance looked like in the first 2 games of the Focus series, because game 1, game 2 were insanely favored towards Radiance. I don't know if it was discomfort, I don't know if it was just nerves coming in, or if it was lack of preparation coming out from Maryville for at least the first few games, but this dominance is what we saw from Radiance. Now they did end up turning it, but this is a whole different breed from what I've seen before. Yeah, I think flash there, but
that's just desperation right there. They're trying to find any pick they really can.
They are. I mean, they're grasping at straws for the most part. Iconic is not doing well in the jungle. He took the Ignite, trying to get aggressive on the likes of this Jace, and just has that, or on this Graves, my apologies, hasn't found anything. We see, honestly, that Wolfie, from the Syndra side, is able to neutralize the matchup, but from the LeBlanc side, it is nowhere near having that ability, or at least in this particular game, has struggled to find out how Young Mid actually does it on the LeBlanc to keep himself even, because he's down 4 deaths right now. And then, of course, the side lanes aren't going immaculate either. Yeah, Value, Shady, and Niles aren't particularly far down on their opponents. But really, in terms of gold, in terms of map pressure, it's just been Radiance all day. And I don't see them slowing down at any point. I honestly think Maryville just might be done in this one.
I mean, and speaking of gold as well, if you look at the scorelines of Andy Bendy and Value, they're not too far different from each other, both in CS and in kills and assists, but it's still about 600 in favor of Andy Bendy. It was a little bit more earlier because Value just took that tower, but that shows you the objective control, the macro that is coming out of Radiance at this stage of the game.
Yeah, and you're comparing, I mean, Value versus Andy Bendy, which is the lowest gold gap that you've got pretty much across the board. You've got Syndra, who's just absolutely killing this LeBlanc right now in terms of gold. Was it 2,500? That's near an entire item's worth of gold ahead. Your jungle matchup isn't super far ahead, only about 800, but Obvious have way more pressure so far than Iconic. And then top lane, I mean, Engo has quietly picked up 4 kills, and then has the Black Cleaver and completed Monomune. So this late game Jace is going to start hitting so hard against especially people like Wolfie, like Iconic, and like Value.
Ooh, and you can see right there, Wolf trying to get some harassment onto Engo, but Engo's going to get the better of that. And that's going to be the case again and again and again. 401. Engo is incredibly strong. We hyped him up as that high KDA top lane player. That's the type of performance he's been putting on with some of these plays.
He has, and actually, coming back into this, he finds Wolfie's clone, unfortunately, but he just smashes the side lane matchup. And you can put Ornn into that matchup as best you want, but it's not going to do much. So instead, they're throwing Wolfie into it out of thought that maybe Engo doesn't have the magic resist to handle full combo coming out from the LeBlanc. But you have to be really terrified that the exact reverse will happen, where the LeBlanc has no armor and will get absolutely devastated by a Jace who's currently sitting about 2,000 gold ahead of her, and you have to know that that's a possibility.
You can see right there, quick to go for the engage, but not able to pick up anything off it. That was off Ignite being burnt as well. And there's nothing you can really find off the Rift for burning that Ignite, for sending a V back. Radiance has too much control.
They do. They're free to do pretty much anything they want. And even as their second items start to flood in, you got like Void Staff for Cinder, you got what is the lethality? You got Edge of Night coming through from Avi, which means he's going to have a free bounce into a fight where he doesn't have to worry about getting hooked or flayed by Shady. He doesn't have to worry about getting booted out or knocked up by something like the Ornn. You're able to get that kickoff as much as you want, and I'm really terrified with the amount of pressure they're putting on right now for the rest of the series here for Maryville. I don't know if it was a compositional difference. It just looks like right now they're getting it's like they're 2 gears behind what Radiance is trying to put out or trying to exude on this day, and that's a little bit rough. The one chance they've got, I suppose, is Value's late game, where he's got good DPS, and there isn't fantastic Baron take coming through from the side of Radiance, but with the amount of gold they have, they can definitely shred it much, much faster than something like Maryville will be able to do.
Yeah, so basically you're just going to be waiting for a mistake to come out of Radiance. You're waiting for one hiccup that puts that uneven odds, and then use that to control the Baron area and eventually be able to take that Baron with that DPS you were talking about. But that's a very far off win condition. You're really grasping at straws. You're really hoping for the other team to mess up. It really hurts when you're not in control of your own destiny.
100%. I actually want to take a quick look at the vision scores right now, which are relatively even across the board, except that support position where Cow is just manhandling Shady right now. And Shady isn't in a horrible position. 35 at 21 isn't exactly perfect, but for a team that's getting pushed back, your wards are typically going to be more shallow. You're not going to get that vision score. But my lord, Cow sitting at 53 at this point is just ridiculous. He's killing every ward put out. He's putting so many forward. Look at that bottom quadrant. There are wards flooding that area. There is no safety for Maryville anywhere on this map.
But meanwhile, look at the top end of the map. Do you see Engo pushing away over? There comes the Unleashed Power. A lot of damage in, not going to be enough to get the kill, but Engo still uncontested over on that topside inhibitor tower, and no one's really going back right now. You do got the recall coming out of Wolf to try and match that, but we've already seen Wolf has a hard time dealing with this. He's already canceled the recall. Engo still left unchecked.
He's going to be able to walk into this. This is a tough situation. Yeah, you've got a 4-man, but I don't think you even have the gold to take this fight.
Oh, beautiful. Tempered to be able to stop the call of the Forge God. And there goes Cow. Going to be able to slither right on out like nothing even happened. The damage is there, and it goes into the face of Niles, taking him down with the minions in the base. Fighting for your life is Maryville as Cow gonna find another one. Double kill going over to Young, flashing over the wall. Will be Engo's trying to pick up those strengths. It's very low on the health bar. Engo grabs another. Shady gonna be just another victim for the double kill of Engo and Radiance. It's, what can you say but GG?
I mean, you're on the side of Maryville. You literally gave your entire top inhibitor to Engo for free so you could get river priority. You have the 5v4, and you still get beaten because Niles loses most of his health bar, gets ulted from the bard that takes him out of his own ultimate, and now you've got no real CC, no real frontline, and your damage is so much lower than Radiance. What are you really going to do? The TP from Engo, I didn't even know was necessary. I really think they could have sat around that dragon, played footsie for a little while, and Engo could have just finished the game because there was nothing that they could have done to stop it. Even if they send 1 or 2 members back, Engo probably could have won that 1v.
Yeah, welcome to the Engo show. That's what we're seeing here right now with a 7.0 KDA, has a 700 gold bounty on him, and now Baron is picked up by Radiance alongside this Dragon Soul. This is the final nails in the coffin.
It is. They're going to be able to walk down pretty much any lane they want. Top lane's already pushing, and there's very little wave clear. I mean, LeBlanc has Ludens, but that's about all you've got to be able to stop those topside minions. And then you've got Mountain Soul on a team that's sitting 10,000 gold ahead. There's no way to overcome this outside of really devastating mistakes. If you get a ton of shutdowns, maybe there's some chance that Value can get you back into this game if he has the right itemization, if he gets all of that shutdown gold. But barring basically a 5-man in directly into the Aphelios, there is almost no way that Maryville has even a chance in this one.
Yeah, it really takes, like, get a shutdown on Engo, get that nice surplus of gold onto Value, who's getting completely annihilated right now. So it looks like that's not even going to happen as he's forced to take a recall quite soon. Still have Bendy pushing the mid lane, completely unafraid of the LeBlanc. The rest of Radiance are walking around the Rift like they own the place, going to focus down on this bot lane inner tower as super minions start piling in from the top side.
And who do you have to respond to that pressure? Young Mid literally walked into the face of Value, threw his ultimate, and then another shot blast came in from Engo. there's no damage even traded off there. They don't have the range to make it work. If value gets taken out of a fight, there is nothing stopping this team with Mountain Soul from just sitting, pretty good ways back and just throwing Shock Blast, throwing QEs from the Syndra, Bard Qs, things of that sort, and just waiting for that to be enough damage to bring this team down.
Or just waiting for your Syndra R to be back up, like we're seeing with Young right now. Cooldown almost back and available. Value in great danger once again for just that cooldown being free. But Install the Forge God, not going to really land onto anything. A very desperate engage to come out of Maryville. That was really just the last breath right there. There's not much else they can do. They're conceding that bot lane inhibitor tower. Bot lane's under attack. They're going after Young, able to pick him off. He is going golden. If he's able to grab one kill, the other will go over to Shady. 1-for-1 exchange thus far as the tries to find more, looking to dash on in, but it's going to be Niles all by his lonesome, who's going to be the next victim of Radiance as they plow their way through the base of Maryville.
This was a display coming out from the side of Radiance, and it's not quite over yet, but at this moment, with the Mountain Soul and with Baron buff minions flooding into your base against your Nexus towers with this gold lead, I can't expect it to go any other way.
Yeah, closing out this game right now. Here comes the curtain call. We haven't even seen much of that all game. Iconic will go down. The base is in shambles, and Radiance, they're going to look to start off this series with a very dominating game number 1 victory.
Oh my goodness. From minute 1, I mean, outside of that 1 kill from Iconic to start the game where there was really good read, Avi just controlled the map. But not to mention Engo's dominance in the top lane and his teleport play to the bottom side. But my lord, the way that Avi controlled that early game, just throttling everybody, was fantastic.
Absolutely fantastic. The early game was played beautifully from the side of Radiance. I mean, it just came down to, Engo, who got that beautiful top lane play all by his lonesome in the 1v1 when he was getting dived under the tower, of these constant pressure that was going on, the collapses that came out from the rest of the squad to constantly catch out either Iconic or Wolfie. It was great play. They came with a game plan that was pretty much the kryptonite of Maryville.
Yeah, they were the ones always, clustering together. Typically, it's Maryville making the rotation to tower. It's them making the proactive play. It's them that are getting the group ups a lot faster. But in this one, Radiance figured it out really, really quickly to do exactly that against them. And even when they had strengths during the lane phase, like Niles nearly won that 1v1 top lane, ended up giving a kill over to Engo underneath the tower. But then Engo got out of the laning phase with that teleport, ended up picking up another kill, and that basically netted him an entire win. And now you get to play scaling Jason into an Ornn's laning phase who doesn't have an advantage, which is really tough. And not to mention, I mean, you had Avi just destroying Iconic. Young Mid was flexing this Syndra all over Wolfie's LeBlanc. I thought this was going to be way closer than it was, but Wolfie looked a little lost on this particular side of the matchup. And Value and Shady had good plays. They had a couple of decent situations for themselves, but it wasn't enough to get Maryville out.
It really shows how well Radiance can adapt even before the game begins. Just knowing the type of playstyle Maryville University is going to go over and playing against it, trying to pick against it, not going with that safe type of laning, that traditional type of playstyle that just focuses towards the later end games where it's at the 25-minute mark, 30-minute mark, where you're going for the team fights like that. No, threw that all out the window, said we're going to beat them at their own game, and that's what you saw with that game number 1.
And it's a lack of comfort from Maryville. I know that the Graves is something you go to rather often, especially on blue side first pick. The Aphelios Thresh felt really standard to me. I wasn't in love with the LeBlanc pick. I don't think it's fantastic into Syndra no matter what. No. Specifically in this matchup, it looked really bad. But I think there are better things that Wolfie can play to beat something like the Syndra during the laning phase. And I'd like to see him flex a little bit of that for the next draft. And I always harp on Niles, and I want him to play carries because that's what he's really, really good at. And maybe you can look a little bit more to that. But certainly, I don't think Niles was necessarily the problem. I think this was a systematic issue for Maryville.
Yeah, I definitely got to agree with that one. And we'll see if they're able to fix that sort of issue. We are going to throw it over to a short break. This is a best of 5 series. Game number 1 in the books for Radiance. We're going to throw it over to game number 2 when we return here on Risen Esports. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Risen Esports Champions League. And of course, our matchup of the day, Maryville University versus Radiance. And Radiance, a very dominating game number one, Rebel.
100%. They were all over the map. They controlled pretty much every single individual lane matchup as well. There were very few weaknesses coming out from the side of Radiance. You're hard pressed to find a mistake. I think is the hardest thing for Maryville, because what do you actually fix? Is there something in the draft? Is there something in your game plan? I'm not exactly sure what. But hopefully they can go back to the drawing board. They tend to be pretty good as the series continues with this kind of thing. But Radiance didn't make it easy for them game one.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the things we do need to see, at least out of Maryville, is, for one, in Wolf, don't go towards LeBlanc again. If they don't want the LeBlanc over towards Radiance, just ban it out. But we need to see him more on the scaling. We need to see him more on the control mages, something he can stay safe and play to the team fight later on. Then Iconic needs to step up into that early game role to keep his team afloat when it comes to the squad of Maryville.
I would like to see them not pick Graves first overall. I know that's maybe a little bit too much to ask, unfortunately, for Maryville, since they go to it so often. Pretty much anytime it's available on blue side first overall, they grab it. But honestly, I don't think Iconic has looked particularly amazing on the likes of it, to the point where you need to first pick it every time. I think, the Kindred has worked, the Olaf has worked. The Olaf went completely unbanned by Radiance because they grabbed Graves first overall, but that was really dominant in their series against them. And there's plenty of other things you could look for too. Things like Trundle has been really good for Iconic over the course of the season. So don't put that priority on the Graves necessarily unless you really have the game plan around it.
Mm-hmm. And of course, over towards the top side, there was something you were mentioning before we went to break with Niles. Do we still want to see him on the team fight tanks, or do we want to see him on those Ravenous Hydra split pushers?
So my problem with Niles is all season I haven't seen him actually play the split push. Even when you could give this man Fiora and say, okay, you're building Blade of the Ruin King, you're building all the side lane items, and somehow he would still find a way to walk into team fights instead of teleporting from bottom tower or something along those lines. You can't keep him out of fights no matter what, which is why I don't mind the team fight tanks. If he's going to do something like that, I wish he would play something like Renekton or Wukong or something like that, because there's plenty of work to be done on champions like that, both in the laning phase where you can express that skill that we know Niles has, and outside the laning phase in those team fights.
Yeah, and then of course the bot lane match, we saw Andy, Bendy, and Cow had a lot of success, and were able to really enable a V by being able to shove in that lane and constantly go assist him. That's something that definitely needs to change. Maybe Value and Shady need to draft something that does have a bit more lane control.
Yeah, they drafted something that can roam a little bit in the Thresh, and then of course you have the Aphelios, which is the most direct kind of like solo lane thought, but into the Jhin it's perfectly fine. It's just that the likes of the Jhin and Bard completely sandbagged that lane and made it impossible for Value and Shady to get anything going. I mean, the 1-2v2 they took ended up being a trade where Value should have gotten that. 9 times out of 10, Value gets that kill. Andy Bendy flashing into that brush was a thing of brilliance, but honestly, like outside of that, there was zero aggression from Value and Shady that would have led to anything against Andy Bendy and Cal. I agree, they either need something that's more definitive for the laning phase or more definitive for the roaming play.
And now draft number 2, now underway. Wukong, Karthus, Gangplank, Karma, all banned away. One of the more notable bans, would be the Graves. We're not going to see this focused on this time as Rek'Sai gets banned away as well.
That leaves Volibear up, and I'm curious if they take that, because the last time I saw Niles play Volibear was not a good look. They are going to go to Syndra first overall. Whenever Graves isn't up, it's pretty much Syndra. So they're sticking to what they know pretty much in the drafting phase, which I don't disagree with. I think Wolfie's a really good Syndra, and I think there isn't much that Radiance can respond to it with. If they want to go to LeBlanc, they're welcome to, but I really don't expect that to be the case.
Yeah, still waiting for that to go through. Zoe's another pick that we see young mid on quite often. It's not LeBlanc. He does like Zoe. It does play damage-wise, similarly playstyle, much different, of course, but it does get the same thing across where you just want to burst someone out.
That it does, and being able to do so on a champion like Zoe in one rotation is humongous, and the follow-up from Lee Sin onto a bubble or something along those lines is huge as well. If you get that little bit of CC onto Zoe, or if you get some of the aggression in that mid lane coming from Lee Sin, there's a lot of damage that can be dealt between those two. I don't think it has the most ridiculous wave clear, and I actually am not in love into Zoe knowing your opponent is Syndra. I don't think it's bad if it's blinded, but specifically, it's young mid Zoe, and I have a lot of faith that it's going to be able to do well.
And here's an interesting duo to pick up right here, the Sejuani Aurelia. And Picking up these together is a very interesting move as well. Malphite getting locked in, I saw that, cringe, don't worry, we'll get to that in a second. But Sejuani, Aurelia, they work really well together when you put them as a jungle top lane duo, because Aurelia is quick at putting those permafrost stacks and really snowballing that lane.
And it's helpful because the Sejuani's got a lot of CC to enable Aurelia's combination of CC and then her Q bouncing, things of that sort, which is rather nice to have. Now, the problem is now you're playing into Malphite, which is just disgusting amount of pressure that you can put against an Aurelia or any attack speed based top laner here for anybody, and the Aurelia is certainly no difference here. Now, also for backline threat, you already have Syndra to look at, and Value almost always plays ADCs that are going to be backline threats. You're not going to be spread out, you're not going to be anything else. So I'm curious to see, now that Maryville sees the Malphite, what kind of ADC can Value get to that's going to be a little outside the box to make sure Malphite can't just jump on Syndra ADC and win the team fight there.
I mean, as we saw, the Ezreal was just found away. This does leave the Aphelios up, or even the Ashe up, as we've seen before. Andy Bendy likes to go that route. More bans coming in. Nautilus and Pantheon getting taken away. Not going to get that roaming. Not one more ban to come out of Maryville University.
I'm curious to see if they go an ADC here. Once again for Ezreal, if they decide to ban something else. Okay, they go to Kalista. Andy Bendy is really good on the Ezreal, and the Kalista specifically, I think, is phenomenal. They're actually going to save that. That's really interesting. They grab the Thresh away to make sure that Shady can't snatch it up for himself, have that roaming and that laning pressure that he's got. And then also, they're saving their ADC, or at least making sure that they can counterpick something in that bot lane. It's not something we see often in a meta like this, where there's so few meta ADCs, but with so many taken off the board, it's not shocking to see Radiance want that counterpick.
Yeah, so waiting for Maryville to go for the next pick right now. Thresh being picked up by Radiance is definitely very good. It's something, once again, we were talking about it last draft. Shady and Cal both like playing that champ because it goes towards their style. The Aphelios was left open. It's definitely going to be locked in for Maryville University, as they only have the support left to pick up.
I'm curious whether Shady is willing to go to some sort of Enchanter type support. Rakan fits a little bit more of the kind of engagey type mold, a little bit more Vanguard-esque of an Enchanter, but still rather strong, helps with the roaming pressure. It's not great into Thresh, but it does help the Aphelios' laning phase, so long as there isn't a bunch of pressure bearing down on them from the likes of Lee Sin and Malphite.
Now, one more pick to come out of Radiance. We're still waiting for that ADC pick. We're talking about, you do have champions like Ezreal, even the VAR is still up, going over for the Kai'Sa instead out of Radiance, and definitely a high damage. You do get a bit of burst coming out of Kai'Sa as well, and she can work really well for those very quick engage moments.
Yeah, I'm curious whether or not this is a phenomenal pick, I think, because they need something that's capable of carrying a fight after all things said and done. So Zoe, easy to pick off if you catch her off in a right situation, especially if Aurelia starts to get strong, Syndra starts to get strong. It's easy to pop the Zoe, and then the rest of the team doesn't have that damage or consistent damage at all for things like Baron or Dragon in the late game. So Kai'Sa, I think, fits this mold perfectly. Aphelios won't destroy it in the laning phase. It's got a really good partner in the likes of the Thresh, and there's a lot of people that enable this. Lee Sin kick, Zoe bubble, Thresh Q, Malphite ultimate, to be able to put Kai'Sa in the right position where she wants to get to that backline if necessary.
And don't forget, the Thresh is a pretty good unit for taking out the Recon, specifically, very hard word to say for some reason, stopping that very, very aggressive engagement that you can get going with Recon. Thank God that was nerfed quite a few times after Recon came out. But yeah, you do have a very solid bot lane going on, and you can play it to any which style you really want. You can definitely get that pushing going on that can be very punishing, as we saw from game number 1. And
typically, I would say I really like the idea of like an on-hit Rageblade Kai'Sa here, but I wouldn't hate, I think, full AD Kai'Sa too. There's a build path going around where you go Essence Reaver into Serrated Dirk to get your Q upgrade really early. I think that's helpful into Aphelios to have a little bit more wave clear outside of when he's got Infernum, to be able to shove waves as the Kai'Sa and Thresh affect the map a little bit more. And also, if you are to get a good amount of damage from a Malphite burst onto, say, Syndra or Aphelios backline, they're not likely to die, but if Kai'Sa jumps to the backline, hits them with auto Q, something along those lines, with all that AD, there really is potential that they just immediately get popped. And yes, you don't have the same DPS output against Sejuani or Aurelia that you would normally want as the Kai'Sa, but it does provide you the ability to take out carries from these fights really quickly.
So let's talk a little bit more about the top lane, because we started on that a bit. It's a kind of miserable matchup, the Aurelia versus the Malphite. You do have the backup Sejuani. Do you believe Iconic is going to look to focus around that top side to get Niles going, get him in a position where he can, like, kind of escape that lane and not be stuck in top lane hell?
I will say mid lane is well set up for them with the Syndra versus Zoe. I think Syndra's got a bit more wave clear and really good pressure against Zoe early on. And Aphelios and Rakan, again, unless there's a bunch of pressure bearing down on them, they should be perfectly fine taking this lane against guys at Thresh. So if you're Iconic, I think that's not only one of your better options, but also a really safe option for your map, knowing that the Malphite can stonewall literally against the Aurelia, and Avi might be looking there as well to try to put Niles in the dust a little bit. So if you enable Niles in a side lane, and for one of these team fighting champions like the Aurelia that we talked about, it's a lot more benefit to that than maybe trying to gank for a Zoe, or trying to get Syndra ahead, or trying to pull something into this bottom lane where maybe there's nothing. I would say Iconic should focus on solo lanes here.
And the one thing I do like about Maryville's composition is less about the engage and more about the disengage, more about their ability to get away from Radiance, what Radiance are going to bring to them. Because there is a lot of aggression that comes out of Radiance. The Malphite, the Thresh, even the Sleepy Trouble Bubble with Zoe. Rakan, Sejuani, the Scatter the Weak from the Syndra, they all work well at stopping that initial engagement. After that initial engagement, that is when Maryville University can turn around and punish someone like a V, who's going in very, very deep with Lee Sin.
100%. And that's why I think Engo is really important to this game, because whereas before, say, like last game on the Jace, when he was a lot of their late game damage, a lot of scaling that they had, in this one, he's the engage, but he has to be really careful, because if he engages too far back, yes, he's able to tag something like Syndra Aphelios, but then you've got Aurelia, Sejuani, Rakan that's capable of diving forward and keeping your damage away, and then eventually you just lose your Malphite, and then the team has no frontline tank to soak damage. Whereas if you go more shallow and you try to catch Aurelia, Sejuani, they're a lot harder to kill, and it provides a lot of space for Aphelios and Syndra to try to zone off Avi, zone off Young Mid from coming in, and then being able to put that team fight damage down like the champions are capable of doing.
All right, so the draft is done. Maryville University versus Radiance, ready to hit the Rift. We are going to throw it over to a short break. Before we do, though, remember that LBGN versus Frostfire is going on over at twitch.tv/risen_esports2. Sure to give Cubby and Lemon some of our love, and we'll be right back with more Risen Esports Champions League. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Risen Esports Champions League. Maryville University versus Radiance over on the Scouting Ground circuit. It's been a very, very wild ride across all orgs, and this ride continues here in game number 2.
That it does. And we talked about it a little bit during the break that we liked both of these compositions much more than what we saw in game 1. So barring any more of these massive Radiance just like commands of the map, I'm hoping we get a little bit longer of a game to see some of the team fights come through, because I think there's a fair amount of skill expression in both these teams that can be had.
Yeah, because in last game, one win condition was about thwarting the other win condition, and then you just outright snowball like that. In this one, there's multiple win conditions that you can kind of see going on, especially in each lane, through each phase of the game. It's not clear cut how this is going to exactly play out.
I would agree with that. And across all the lanes also, I think we have a lot more... I think just kind of interaction between the two. So like LeBlanc versus Syndra in that last game, it's relatively difficult for that laning phase to go very well, especially if a LeBlanc gets put behind, which is kind of what happened. The only lane we've got of that in this case is like Niles versus the or Niles versus Inco, the Aurelia versus Malphite, unfortunately. But again, we expect to see a little bit of jungle pressure on the top side, so hopefully that doesn't just kind of turn into a stalemate, end up being a farm fest.
So getting to the lanes right now, it's going to be a red side start coming out of a V with a red side start coming out of Iconic as well. And my eyes are going to constantly be on Iconic and where he decides to go with this Syndra, because it can be very impactful in the early game. Doesn't really need that much in levels, doesn't need that much in stats. It's just a kit that holds down players. And if you can get towards the top side before that Malphite gets going, you do stand a chance of starting at least an early snowball before that early armor is established on the Malphite on Engo.
Most definitely. And then you talk about Iconic getting up there, Wolfie getting up there also with some of the magic damage is really nice. And I think actually in terms of mid jungle priority, outside of some of the early game damage from something like the Lee Sin, the Syndra and the Sejuani should actually have a fair amount of it with the tankiness and the CC from those two champions, so long as Young Mid isn't just absolutely smashing the lane phase. I fully expect for Wolfie and Iconic to do a lot better in that jungle mid matchup compared to last game where it just got absolutely ran over.
And you're already starting to see that push come in from pretty much both the top and bottom lanes coming out of Radiance. And Go getting a lot of that splash damage, gets to freely push in and get priority towards that top side. And more of the established priority that we saw from Radiance's bot lane from game number 1 happening again in game number 2. But look at this, a little bit of a fight breaking out towards this top end. Niles wants to take advantage of those early stats and get some damage on the Engo, send them back home.
Really, really well played there from the likes of Niles on this Aurelia. Able to find just the engage, the W also at the end, getting that key reset. Unfortunately, I think maybe the key wasn't reset up the last one, which was really unfortunate. The auto attacks would have definitely killed. And thankfully, Engo didn't end up having to burn Flash, which is really great. But did shove him out of lane, does have a small advantage. It can maybe look for a lot better of a back timing here with his gold value as opposed to what when Engo comes back with only the cloth armor.
Yeah, and now Avi, realizing that everything that just went on, Engo did take his recall, did back off, did teleport. You know, no one's over towards that top side in the lane, so V is starting to roam a little bit towards this bottom side, looking for any potential setup he can get. Too far pushed in, though. Not anything you can really grab on these early objectives. Still waiting for the dragon to spawn. We got another minute before that, but you're starting to see how Radiance are playing the map. They're just getting control, establishing small vision around those neutral objectives they want to grab early, and then making the plays off that.
And if you continue with this kind of gameplay, I do think that Kai'Sa and Thresh will have to push on bottom side, so you can play a little bit more to the bottom side over here if you're the likes of Avi. And you're seeing that come through now with this pathing, where you're going to start on top side here and clear your way down, and the game plan is just to clear your way down the map until you end up at the Dragon Pit, whereas now Iconic is looking the exact opposite. You go for the Krugs and then into your Raptor Pit, and then you're looking likely to top lane for either Rift Herald spawn, which is a little bit off kilter for what your clear time will be, or you're looking for a mid or top gank, which I think is a lot more viable in this case, trying to get either Niles or Wolfie ahead in their laning phase with the likes of the CC from Sejuani.
Yeah, it would be the more ideal thing. You want to play off to that synergy, and you want to get Niles going. That's the big thing. He's on the Aurelia. He can start to carry this game. Avi looking to set up towards the mid lane. Cows also starting to posture up over here, but will be spotted out. Wolfie able to get out. No fight going to break out just yet.
I'm really lost as to why Avi decided to do that. Again, he had a really easy pathing down to the bottom side. It looked like the Kaiser and then Cal were going to be able to get a solid back timing or a bounce off the tower. So it should have been a Dragon coming through, but instead he's going to come up to top lane. Him and Icon, or they're going to battle Niles and Iconic here.
Yeah, looking to take this fight. Niles will be able to get the stun, and Engo goes critically low. It's going to be first blood going over to Niles, and he wants to make it too. Still running low on the health bar, but he does not care. Niles with the double kill early on, and that's going to be exactly what you want if you're Maryville University. Get Niles going.
I think that's a little bit of improvisation there from Avi, just kind of adapting his pathing and making it look like maybe he's heading towards bottom side. But he got spotted out mid lane, immediately walked up river where there was some information coming in, and then the lane gang from Iconic was just not matched there. I'm a little curious why Avi decided that that fight was a good plan, because you've got good damage and good synergy, as you said, between the Aurelia and the Sejuani on this top side. So, again, it was a relatively free Dragon if you're able to get it. And now, I mean, you do afford yourself a back priming here for Andy, Bendy, and Cal because they got the free push on the bottom side. But the Dragon is still up here for Avi, so maybe you can now make that play. Just a little bit of a fumble on the top side.
Yeah, but they have to make it quickly. The recall did just come out of Iconic, so they do have a little bit of time to start this up. They will just grab the crab for the time being, get the scuttle, get that vision established. Iconic headed towards this bot side now. It's all a matter if we see the recalls coming out. Value, too low on mana, will take that recall. This still does give a lot of time for Radiance to try and posture up on this Drake if they can, but they have to be quick about it, and they're looking to find that setup right now, going for Shady. Out comes the Sonic Wave, but Death Sentence not going to land.
Really important bit of information there. I think so. Shady shoving this wave means that Andy Bendy's going to feel more inclined to stick around here. And then, of course, the teleport mid lane from Youngmid was to try to get the push pressure, but it looked like Syndra was able to hold that wave where you would typically want it. And so now they're really terrified of the prospect of Value coming back and just beating them in the team fight.
This Niles finally starting to get some of that mojo going. He is going to be going for that Blade of the Rune King early. Definitely smart of him. Get that on-hit magic damage when going into the Malphite matchup. See what else he's able to pull off as this goes on. Looking to get the knock-up onto Andy Bendy. Andy Bendy forced to flash away. A stun. Meanwhile, in the top lane, as Engo tries to take this 1v1, Cal going to show up. Here comes the Death Sentence, followed by a flash. Here comes the Lantern as well. Not going to be able to get the assist to a V, but a brilliant setup coming up from Cal.
Yeah, really good little setup there. I think, especially if they were able to stall this out for another 30 seconds. The problem is, Rift Herald has not spawned yet. You've now moved Cal to top side, which means you have no priority on bottom side, so Iconic is going to take this Dragon for free, and Andy is just getting harassed here, and they might actually be able to dive him.
Oh, right under the tower, Andy gets caught out, and Shady is going to grab that kill. The bot side of the map is now going over to Maryville University, and they're finding their footing early, 7 minutes into this game.
And really curious from Avi, because last game he just absolutely smashed the map with his presence everywhere. And in this one, like I said, he had an opportunity to go bot lane and Dragon against the play from Iconic. Instead, turns top lane and dies. Tries to do the same thing again and stalls out because, of course, Shady was able to hold the wave and force Andy Bendy to farm, and it bought enough time for Value to get back. And then for some reason, Cal and Avi end up top lane, and yeah, you get a shutdown against Niles, but you've cost yourself a couple of plates on bottom tower, Value a kill underneath that the bottom tower, and you lose first Dragon of the game, and don't even get Rift Herald pressure off the back of it. They don't even have vision in this top river.
Yeah, it felt like they wanted the fight more than they wanted the neutral objectives this time. They weren't really playing the map as much. They just wanted to snowball an early lead, and it's starting to fall apart now. You still have a lot of time to try and be able to recover from this. It's still in the early game. We're only 8 minutes in, but they need to start playing that macro quite soon.
And especially after what we saw from them last game, I'm a little bit shocked at just not how little they've cared about the neutral objectives off the map. In fact, they're actually going to lose Rift Herald again as well. So yeah, you've got a couple of fights. You got one fight to go your way and being able to kill that Aurelia underneath of top tower for the most part with 3 members. But outside of that, so far, Iconic doing a lot better of job on the likes of this Sejuani, putting pressure on the map and controlling these neutral objectives, as well as these lanes, which have just been, they've looked a lot more on the front foot. Niles in this top lane looking like the old-timey aggressive type Niles, controlling this laning phase, then bottom lane also making a play for themselves. Oh!
Death Sentence is not going to land, but here comes the engagement out of Shady, getting Cal critically low. He will fall. Ultimate goes out, and Go just barely able to step away, but can't get away from the Scatter the Weak, using the unstoppable force to be able to save himself from that engagement.
Yeah, they get a kill on bottom side for Cal, and once again, really unfortunate that Value doesn't pick it up because it's been 2 now for Shady that he has grabbed. But top side, they also make a play, which is really rare to see that. Avi was not able to make a response play on bottom side. He's hovering here now, but I don't think it's easy to make this play happen. And even now, Zoe made the roam down, completely called it off, and comes back to mid lane here. Really, really fumble play across the map from the side of Radiance, not finding anything.
Yeah, and this is starting to get desperate now because there's a lot of resources that's being invested by Radiance, and to almost no avail. They haven't been able to really turn around the top lane with what's been going on. Engo was able to get a kill earlier, but Niles is still a beast at this stage of the game. You're seeing that. Engo forced to burn his flash to get away from the Aurelia.
This isn't a particularly great matchup for the Malphite. It's just that when you build a ton of armor, it's easy to try to keep Niles at bay at least a little bit. But with only Ninja Tabai and then of course the additional cloth armor with Bombi Cinder coming in, you have a bit more wave clear on Engo, but you don't have the ability to soak all of those auto attacks. If you go something like Bramble Vest, first item, you counteract what this Blade of the Rune King is able to bring you, but unfortunately Engo doesn't opt for that. Instead, opts for a little bit more of that wave clear option. And he's kind of suffering for it now. He had to flash away from Niles there in the 1v1 as a Malphite against an Aurelia early game.
Yeah, and off that recall, Niles is going to be able to pick up Blade of the Rune King, so that damage is going to start ramping up now. It's going to get harder and harder for Engo. He doesn't have flash up. He doesn't have the unstoppable force. Blade of the Rune King can put in that slow, and you see Iconic is already starting to roam around that top side.
Yeah, now Shady, I think, is also free to kind of get out and about on the map as well, because you do have Andy Bendy. He is going for the likes of the Essence Reaver into Serrated Dark build, so you have that Q upgrade, but it's not going to be available for at least a little bit of time, and Value has, I mean, he's not going to have it for long, the Infernum, but the wave clear should be there from the likes of Value with this, the crit cloak, and then, of course, the BF sword, for Shady to be able to roam around. So now Rakan is doing a little bit more reconnaissance here in the top jungle to be able to put some wards down. Trock Avi, which actually is now going to buy Niles top lane here, because Malphite can't sit in that top lane against Niles when he knows that everybody else is on the bottom side of the map.
No, he cannot stand the chance. So, I mean, we're 11 minutes in. He's already 2k gold down his lane opponent. That is discouraging, to say the least, at this stage of the game.
This is, like I said, even across all the other series and all the other games I've seen from Radiance and Maryville, it's almost usually, it's like very rarely does Niles have the pure advantage in the laning phase. And this is not the matchup I would have thought it would have been into either, but certainly Niles doing a phenomenal job on the Aurelia, pressing that champion's advantage as much as they can, and Radiance not able to make the other side of the map work. Yeah, you can play weak side Malphite. That's not a really bad thing to do, but you're not playing strong side either.
Ooh, and here comes the engagement, looking to go on to Young. Young taking too much damage. The Unleashed Power, followed by the Unstoppable Force. Now Niles is going to be caught out and taken down by Andy Bendy. Andy Bendy trying to walk underneath his tower as Cal starts to get low as well. Scatter the weak once again. Wolf will pick up 1 kill. Still getting more damage in, but underneath the tower will be Radiance. More kills going over to Maryville.
3 now going in their direction, which is a really nice thing to see, and a couple picked up for Wolfie, as well as I believe one somewhere in there ending up getting picked up for Niles or for Iconic perhaps, but still really, really solid plays. Their team fight was there. Somehow Niles, again, without TP, is the first one to the fight versus Idgo, who also has to make that roam down. Might have burnt the TP during that case, and now bottom side River was in their control with all 5 members there first. Aphelios is continuing to scale up. They get their second dragon of the game, and this is looking so much better here for Maryville than in game number 1.
I mean, already 2 Drakes. Every neutral objective has gone over towards Maryville. It was the flip in game number 1. So you're seeing the competition both these teams bring. You're seeing the adaptions come out of Maryville, going tit for tat in these matchups. It's quite astounding to see Maryville make such a phenomenal comeback in game number 2.
That it is. As we see, of course, all their lanes going much, much better too, which is nice to see. Again, Niles wasn't really terrible in the laning phase, but even Wolfie doing rather well, and then Value and Shady have kind of made themselves really, really available here in bottom side for some of the open plays in the pure 2v2. Not even with ganks from Iconic, not even with ganks from somebody like Wolfie or teleports from Niles. It's just been on their own right being able to find some of the plays, which has been fantastic to see.
Another scatter of the week onto Young. 2 kills for nothing so far on Wolfie, who's been doing very, very well with this Syndra. And I mean, it's Syndra. There's very few bad matchups for Syndra. She just works well as that control mage who can put out such heavy burst damage. And when you have a lead this strong, it puts such a huge threat onto Young, onto Andy Bendy, because when she hits that stage where she's able to get those late gate items and just press R, you got outskilled.
You did, and one of the hardest targets, I think, are the two carries here. Or Young Mid, you throw your ultimate out and you're going to put yourself in a precarious situation to be susceptible to that ultimate. And then Andy Bendy, if he wants to ult, then has to be there too. Now, Dive on the bottom side looking like potentially a play, gets completely slammed by the turret from Value. Are you kidding me?
Oh, and here it comes. The engagement looking to go in. Shady trying to find it, but wants to back off instead. Too many members of Radiance were in the area. It would have been a suicide mission if they'd gone for it. So smart of them to back off. Radiance still not able to get anything.
Yeah, they do respond with the top side of the map here, pressure here from the side of Maryville, so that top tower is going to get at least a wave crash into it that Engo won't likely be able to respond to, and more importantly, Rift Herald's going to go their way. So now they can easily break mid or bottom tower very, very quickly and start to open up this map just a little bit by little bit. Super well played from Value and Shady there, somehow finding, with a 4-man collapsing around them, a ton of trade damage, nearly a couple kills, and then had the game sense also to know that Malphite could be there as well. While their team is winning the map, they pull away and just go back to wave clear. Phenomenal stuff.
I mean, he's already got a completed item as well. The Infinity Edge done. No completed items for Andy Bendy just yet. So he's in prime position. He's in a great spot to be able to do his best in this bot lane matchup against Radiance's bot lane. And you're starting to see that performance add up more and more. No, he hasn't picked up kills, but he's been playing the map quite well. He's been doing his job well. And when it comes to the late game, he's going to be an absolute monster if Radiance can't get towards that backline.
They will. And we did see, of course, the Rift Herald ended up getting summoned here. The mid lane. Fight on bottom side potentially as well, though.
Trying to walk away. Value gonna go for the flash and take out Andy Bendy right in the bush. Death sentence comes out. Cow trying to fight for his life and survive. The knockup not going to come in, so Cow should be able to escape this one. But the threat of Value, it is so damn high. And the threat of Niles is going to be here too, over in the mid lane, looking to dash on in. But there comes the unstoppable force. Engo able to read that one, catch it out, and grab a kill. Now over the bottom side, still more fights going on across the rift. A V, critically low, will hop over towards the lantern, find his way to safety. But still a little bit of life left in Radiance, but you're going to need a lot more than just that.
You will. The dive mid lane does get negated by the fact that Engo was able to get a good ultimate onto the likes of Niles when he dove for Young Mid, because they were trying to make best of the Rift Herald play as fast as they could, but weren't able to make that one happen. But bottom side, they make a better play happen, where they're able to find a 2v3 fight win across the board, and they get their tower on the bottom side. Really, really phenomenal stuff. Now Engo getting bullied by Wolfie in the mid lane too, as he takes the tower. Oh.
That's sad. That feels bad, especially when you're a Malphite. Like, you're supposed to be the one who stands around. Do I have my ult? Am I gonna use it? Be afraid of me? No, everyone's running in this poor lad's face.
Yeah, Wolfie, he watched him ult his friend underneath the tower there, so he's just living with no fear, throwing orbs out constantly, and goes like, I might kill you, I might run you down, and he's just standing there auto-attacking the tower without a care in the world, and nearly broke it himself, and now, I mean, mid-tower is going to be under siege with that rotation from the likes of Value and Shady, who now have better access to the map as well.
Yeah, a little bit of pressure coming out of Niles. Definitely got to be afraid of him at this stage of the game. Over in the mid lane, Wolf being a beast here, and especially against Engo, because Engo, yet to pick up any magic resistance, is going to full armor, as to really be expected. But look at this engagement coming out from Radiance. They're trying to set up something bottom. The rotations coming out of Maryville University, they're sending their members to match, and Cow's starting to realize that right now as he starts to back off. Engo is there. Doesn't have the unstoppable force just yet. It is going to come off cooldown in just a moment. Now it's available, but it's retreat for Radiance right now. Getting caught out. Engo, the Lantern, not close enough. It did not get over the wall. And sadly, Engo's failing that one.
I can't get to the Lantern, can't get out. You always ping. Like 99% of the time, Thresh is always complaining about somebody flashing instead of taking the Lantern. But that time, the Lantern just a little bit out of position. So, you get to yell at your local Thresh main for things like that. But once again, Radiance completely gives up bot side pressure here. Only Niles on bottom side was able to pull the pressure of 3 people trying to wave clear against him. And then the fight went so easy. Iconic literally just runs down Ingo from the
Oh, beautiful use of the death sentence, but Value turns it around and destroys Andy Bendy. Niles shows up just for the look to destroy Cow. And that's the bottom lane annihilated of Radiance. The push continues and the dominance is here.
That Severum ultimate is so deceiving sometimes. You get a ridiculous amount of health back for it, and right there you saw that in spades with Value being able to turn around that massive play, and a fantastic hook from Cal being able to make that happen. I'm waiting for this to break into a fight because I know it's about to. Oh.
Ooh, but Wolf's very low right here. Battlestar not going to land, but you don't really need it when you got those auto attacks to shut down going over to a V. A V now looking to roam his way over towards this bot side. Engo with the Unstoppable Force able to use it. A double kill goes over to a V as he's able to take down Niles as well. It's definitely a good kill, but it's on to the Lee Sin. That's not where you want your gold allocated.
Not ideally, and a really good fight in transition. Shady gets really aggressive. Who's there to follow him up? What?
Yeah, Shady, what are you doing, my friend? I'm a little bit confused on that one. It's going to be another kill over to a V who's just cashed in his 1 for 3, I guess.
Shady in his chat's got to be like, why am I the only one grouping right now? Because he just decided to jump underneath the tower against Youngmin. I don't even know what to say. Like that's about as close to just like a ridiculous nonsense meme that I've seen in this in a long time.
Team, help, please, team.
It's ridiculous, man. Like, he's so far. He's literally underneath the secondary mid tower with no one even on his side of the map. Like, I don't understand how that even comes to his mind.
It's a strange one, but Maryville University are still very, very far ahead, so it's not going to be the biggest hiccup, but it is giving Radiance a little bit of room to breathe, a little bit of room to try and get back into this game. Around this point, the big thing here was it gave Radiance time to set up vision around the Baron, around the neutral objective, something Maryville University has been controlling so dominantly in this game number 2.
Yeah, and the big reason why a lot of that just happened was actually the vision control from Radiance and their bot, or their blue side quadrant was really good. They were able to spot out Wolfie roaming. They were able to kind of cut off Niles from the rest of his team and make sure that he didn't have any vision so that he could play safely, because Lee Sin, of course, would end up coming in. And obviously, Shady jumping in wasn't the most ridiculous. It was pretty ridiculous, but honestly, the control of that blue side quadrant was what really allowed them to. So now they shift that vision to Baron, and maybe the approach can come through from Radiance. You're able to have Avi approach, Engo can find a decent angle to throw an ultimate from, and Andy Bendy can try to put out some damage. But here's a charm on a Cow.
Oh, and this is rough right here. Cow not having that much vision over towards this side, starting to run really low. The smite comes out, Ignite's gonna tick, and Shady will grab the kill. Ooh, but we're not done just yet. Niles, a beautiful sidestep out of Andy Bendy, able to get away from the stun of Niles in the top lane of He's gonna go down. Andy Bendy, he got away from the stun, but he can't get away from the damage of an Aurelia. Able to get the kill onto Andy Bendy, even with that awesome killer instinct.
Okay, I was waiting to see if this were done yet, because the Niles did finish the death stance that he was waiting for, and so all of that healing combined with the stack conquer and a few things were able to keep him in the fight. And Andy Bendy, he goes for this kind of more bursty type guys to build, but it wasn't enough damage by any standard to bring him down fast enough. And since it wasn't auto attacking from Niles onto Engo, he was throwing all of his damage onto Andy Bendy. Andy Bendy couldn't get away, and now their team takes pressure on top side, kill 2 members up here, they get their vision back, and end up taking a very free Baron off the back of a good play from Niles and a couple of plays in this topside jump.
I didn't actually get a good look at it, but was Exhaust up when they took that fight? Because he still has Exhaust right now.
I don't think he had. If I recall, he was on cooldown when he was during that fight. Now, even with that Exhaust, I'm sure that at least the best case scenario, it saves his life, but he still has to walk away and they still lose Baron. But I'm pretty sure it was down at the time, at least. I'm sure he would have used it if he thought it was going to be pertinent.
And here comes the very critical moment. Dragon is spawning in another 40 seconds. Can't really concede this right now. We're at Dragon's Soul Point. If you're Maryville University, if you're Radiance, you're looking to get whatever vision you can. You don't want to concede the Dragon Soul. You don't want to concede the Baron. You want to pick these fights very carefully, but that really comes from playing the map, from getting that vision up. You have 30 seconds to try and find a pick to uneven the odds, but Nile has long left that top side and is roaming over towards that Dragon Pit.
Something he does better than most top laners is actually joining his team in very, very important and critical issues without needing that teleport. He's always in the fight when he needs to be, and this is going to be absolutely no different.
Oh, Young over the wall, gets caught out, will go golden, sparing his life for a little bit longer, uses the Lantern to be able to get away, but here comes Niles shorting the fight, Unleash Power, Value able to get the kill onto a V, but this is looking terrible for Radiance. Niles showing up, he's bloodthirsty, and he will take down Cow. Battlestar goes out, Young on the run, and so is Andy Bendy. No one to defend this turret, no one to stop the Infernal.
Yeah, that's going to be Infernal Soul, that's going to be mid tower, and that's going to be Baron. And honestly, if I were on the side of Maryville, I would not stop pushing here, because Engo doesn't have ultimate, and he's the only one remaining for this team that can actually try anything. Yes, you have Kai'Sa and Young Mid coming back out here on their respective champions, but look at the damage they can do onto Engo, and that's their tank right there. There is very little chance they're going to be able to stop this team once this Infernal Soul comes through.
Yeah, 2,500 left on the Drake. Just waiting for that sound. Waiting for the big moment, the closing moments. We saw it in game number 1, but it was the other way around. Radiance with Baron and Dragon Soul. Now it's Maryville University holding that Baron and Dragon Soul, waiting to close this out.
And it's so interesting because, I mean, game 1, we saw such ridiculous dominance from Radiance in the fact that they always were willing to take the fight, and they always had the outnumber against Maryville, even when Maryville was the one aggressing. And in this one, it felt like the opposite was true in that Maryville was always ready for the play that could be made by Avi, but they were actually generating their own plays. It's really strange that they're both playing this kind of counteraction style where you're always ready for what your opponent is doing, and you're never able to set up a super clean variant of your own play to come out. We've seen that now twice in a row, where the team that's playing really, really counteractively to the other is the one that's going to come away with an advantage in the early game.
So close for that death sentence, enough to even scare the cleanse out of Wolfie. All meanwhile, still the Dragon Soul's there, the Baron's there, looking to close this out, looking to get that final push. Actually, Baron expired, excuse me, but bot lane tower going to go down, that bot lane inner falling. You're going to have super minions pushing in the mid lane, and there's no real team fight to come out of Radiance. They went for a more early game oriented with the Lee Sin, but Lee Sin wasn't able to do much in that early game and fell way too far behind in the early game as well to Niles. So this is just survival mode. You're trying to find any mistake, pretty much the flip side of what we saw in game number 1. That's the theme of this game number 2 match. Find any mistake that Maryville University might do, but Maryville University's comp is really foolproof once they get this far ahead, once they get going.
And I think that's really hard to do also, given the fact that, of course, Andy Benny not going for that hyper-scaling on-hit build, it's kind of a little bit behind due to the fact that you go for that Q-Max early young mid, has not really found success, has to build really defensively with that Banshee spell second item, just to be able to survive in a game like this. So even if they find the proper fight, proper engage from Engo, from Avi, I don't know that they've got the damage to back it up against an Infernal Souled Maryville who's up 12,000 gold right now.
Yeah, just stalling out the game at this point. Trying to get whatever poke damage they can. This Zoe, unfortunately, hasn't really been that impactful. We haven't seen those big paddle stars that make you cringe and make you curse at Riot Games saying, why don't you nerf this champion? No, they've tamed the Zoe quite well.
They have really been able to. A lot of their fights have actually been in a really open space, which I think is very creative for Maryville to not just think about what their composition is capable of doing, but understanding the geometry around which you want to try to find fights. If you're fighting in the jungle, these bubbles come over the wall, they come through little crevices and places you can't see, and the flank angle comes out so much better from young mid. But when you're fighting in open area where you've got good vision all over the place, it's so much harder as the Zoe to try to find access to the backline. You get punished very quickly if you jump into one incorrect location.
See right here, a lot of attention going towards that bot side for Radiance, but ooh, Niles over the wall going after Cow. Engo will use the Unstoppable Force as well as the Killer Instinct going to be used, but Niles, he does not care, willing to take no prisoners, nothing whatsoever, even accepts a few more hits of damage, says go ahead, throw it at the chin, I'll throw you one better, takes down the bot lane of Radiance, and now the base is open. This is completely exposed, and this is the nightmare Radiance did not want, finding a knock-up onto Young. Down goes a Nexus tower. So much damage from this squad of Maryville University as they take down another Nexus tower. Niles just dancing around all over the base, putting on those dancing shoes and wiping away at this Nexus. Couple more ticks remain, but it shows you right there, the retaliation has been made. We have a series. Radiance fall, Maryville evening it up 1-1.
Really crazy to see two super dominant wins back to back from the team, but I mean, the way that we saw all of the series go over the previous week, I'm not completely shocked in that regard. Game 1, of course, went really heavily the way of Radiance because of their control. And this one, it was a little bit of laning strength. I thought that Niles played top lane really well, got an advantage, and then Avi, as opposed to what happened last game, where there was a lot of that neutral objective control prioritized, was actually looking more for the lane strength, which is a little bit strange on his part, given the way that game 1 went, and because of that, actually gave up quite a bit of space here for Value, for Shady, for Wolfie to operate on this bottom side of the map. And Iconic, how about Iconic's performance, too? Completely different from game number 1. Struggled on the Graves mightily, and in this one comes out with the Sejuani and pops off.
Yeah, I want to go back to a point you just made, though, because, like, we saw how well Radiance do when they have that early game focus that's oriented towards macro and those neutral objectives. What made them change that so much? That's what kind of blows my mind. Like, they had so many chances to be able to take the early Drakes when we saw Iconic over towards that top side, but they were always wanting to respond to Iconic and go for the kills is what it really felt like.
Yeah, it was a little bit strange from Radiance, and I know sometimes there's calls like that made because they're unexpected. Let's be real. If Avi was going for a relatively direct, clear path, because you see top to bottom immediately to jungle because you've got the pushing bottom lane. That just makes sense in a lot of regards. So instead says, okay, I'm going to throw some flavor and do a little bit of difference in this pathing and go top lane to try to shut down Niles, who had just picked up a double kill off the back of that top lane, put him back into a place where the Malphite can stonewall that that top lane, and ended up messing that play up in that regard. And I think that was the really troublesome thing, was Avi going for more of the individual play, going for a little bit more of the stranger pathing than what we saw in game one, where he was just absolutely all over the map. And unfortunately, it kind of cost his team in this one.
And we do have to talk about the superstar of that last matchup, and that's going to be Niles. I mean, he's one of the veterans of the North American amateur scene as well as the collegiate scene. He's been with Maryville University for, I believe, about 2 years now. This guy knows competitive. And you saw the adaptation right there. He stepped away from the team play like we were kind of hoping he would and went more towards the carry-oriented role, and with great success. He took out Engo early before the matchup became problematic and just dismantled Radiance from the top side down.
And that's what I want to see from him, is I want to see a bit more individual play. He's a fantastic player. He plays team fights really well. Give him a champion like that. Like I said, Wukong and Kenner are the two that come to mind, but Aurelia is right in that regard too. You've got the ultimate, you've got really good backline damage, you've got good dive threat with your E, your W is enough sustain to keep you alive. And then in the solo lane was doing fine into Malphite. Yeah, you don't solo kill the Malphite for the most part as the Aurelia, even in the late game. But certainly, I mean, you're able to pull a lot of pressure. How many times did Kaiser and Thresh come down to fight the Aurelia and he walked away with the 2 kills and no deaths on his side as opposed to his opposition? Really, really well done soaking pressure and being that team fighting force, doing everything that he likes to do.
So Maryville University able to turn this into a series. We're now 1-1. It's coming down to just a best of 3 at this point. The best of 5's been thrown out. We've pretty much drawn the battle lines. We said, hey, I can bring a dominant performance. So can you. Let's throw down a couple more times and see where this leads to. Hopefully that road will lead one of these teams to finals. We're going to throw it over to short break. When we return, we'll get into more Risen Esports Champions League in this matchup of Maryville versus Radiance. Welcome back, everyone, to Risen Esports Champions League. Maryville University versus Radiance. Hot matchup so far. We had dominance one way, dominance the other way. We're evened out at 1-1 apiece.
And even crazier, I think this is the biggest part to me, is that normally when we see that, it's because they switch sides. And we haven't seen a side swap even yet. It's been blue side exclusively for Maryville, red side exclusively for Radiance. And I suppose they're just willing to dig into this matchup and just continue going the way that they have, because they've both taken a very dominant game on those sides.
Yeah, and what I'm hoping to see more of is, at least from the side of Maryville, to constantly repeat that, to keep Niles over on those carry rolls, stay away from that Graves as they keep banning out, which has worked so well for them, just putting Iconic onto more of that tank role, being able to play the map a little bit more. The Graves didn't work too hot. Now it's bound away again. Gangplank bound away, always bound away against Niles, but Maryville looking to go for the Aphelios.
Yeah, so Maryville had their most priority 2 picks taken away, in the Graves and the Syndra. They banned the Graves, of course, that's what they did last time, and then Syndra banned out in place of what was the Rek'Sai. And so Maryville, they're like, okay, what's our next best pick? They go to Aphelios immediately. They leave Volibear here, which is a massive pick for Engo that he does really, really well with, and it typically shuts down the lane of Niles in a very convincing fashion.
And going straight for the ADCs as well. Kalista going to be locked in right away. The Volibear, you got to unleash the storm, be able to disable those towers. I know Mad Magical right now is having a blast because his Wrecker never really left, is still here in spirit because of Volibear.
You gotta love to be able to dive those towers, and I've always been curious now whether or not like Volibear Elise would be a really strong combo as opposed to like Renekton Elise, because you can start off the tower being eradicated, or start it off with Elise and then jump in with Volibear or something. But I don't know if either team is willing to run something like Elise. It's not super powerful right now, but the idea of having a dive buddy for Volibear under any kind of target is phenomenal.
And this is another pick I'm going to like for Maryville University, going straight for that Trundle. Of course, you can start disabling a lot of the resistances you get from those tank junglers, or, just Volibear outright. But it's a good pick because it plays towards the style that we saw last game coming out of Maryville University. It still has that supportive tanky role and can work well with Aurelia to snowball that lane once again for Niles.
I really like the Trundle here. It's blind, which is something. Of course, Volibear can be flexed a little bit, but I doubt that it's going to go to the jungle position since Ingo plays it so well. But I love the Trundle because of the ultimate coming through, being able to drain stats from anybody. If Volibear wants to build kind of tanky, you'll be able to remove that entirely. But mainly the Pillar. The Pillar is huge here, being able to block Volibear from running in, being able to throw it onto Kalista, and she basically becomes half of a champion for at least 5 seconds, because you lose all of your movement speed, you lose your ability to dash for a second. That's auto attacks you're losing as well. So really, really important for Trundle to be able to have that pressure.
Yeah, so first phase of draft going to go down. Going to be wrapped up with Pantheon locked in for Radiance. So going a very spicy comp here. You can get the man drop, have that global pressure that can be quite frustrating to deal with, kind of that whole pseudo TF thing, and the reason why he spiked up in popularity.
Yeah, and you see actually now, it's not just the pressure from Pantheon, but the potential of the support flex for Pantheon here with Kalista, and the complete denial of safe laners here. Braum and Tom Kench taken away from the side of Maryville, meaning they want to get aggressive in their bottom lane. Andy, Bendy, and Cal have been a big reason, especially in the laning phase, why they find success, and I think they lost a little bit of that in the first 2 games of this series, and now they're going back to it with a super aggressive Kalista Pantheon bot lane.
So able to have that, waiting for that last ban to come out of Maryville University. It is going to be the Galio, so pick going over to Radiance. They will have the counter pick, and there's a lot of flexibility going on here. So waiting for that lock, they're going to head over towards the Scarecrow. Happy birthday, it's going to be Fiddlesticks.
Oh my goodness, this would be a huge pick, because it's still a little bit flexible into the jungle, depending on if you're willing to take it in that position, but mid lane it's also just monstrous with that tank and the ability to sustain through pretty much anything. It's great blind instead. Afi playing the Dark Potions, going back to Lee Sin.
Yeah, always the juke, but Lee Sin, can't really blame him for going it. It is a high-tempo jungler. It is something that works well when Radiance want that early win condition to try and steal it away from Maryville, who, once they get that early lead, they've been historically ones to snowball that into a victory. Lee Sin works against that early game condition.
That he does, being able to not only during those first few levels have really, really strong play against lane specifically, especially when you've got like Volibear stun, Pantheon stun, a lot of damage with the Ren from Kalista to capitalize on. for this early game. Not to mention, I mean, you look at the lanes, like Aurelia is good in the 2v2, but requires a little bit of itemization before that happens. Aphelios is going to get aggressed against no matter what support this happens to be. And Orianna, not really the greatest pick of all time either. This would be a huge grab. Okay.
There's a lot of things that Poppy works against when we're talking about stopping dashes. I mean, the worst of which to get affected by would be the Callisto. When you get that just completely stopped from you when Poppy's right in your face, steadfast presence denies your ability to move around, it already hurts enough because it's not something that's where you have to predict it like it's a skill shot. You're just walking up and anticipating it's going to happen because it's Callisto.
Yeah, not to mention, you stop the Pantheon W, which is the stun. You're going to be able to remove that little bit of pressure from something like the Aphelios. And then the Lee Sin trying to come in and be able to get a good kick angle or something along those lines. Has to play really carefully around this Poppy and that steadfast presence. And this is actually a really, really huge pick for Maryville, being able to flex this. I haven't seen them do something super creative like this in a little while, or usually they dig into their champion pools. But this is something I have not seen them run all season. I love that they're willing to bring something like this out.
So I'm wondering if it's going to stop the Volibear ultimate, though, because I know Volibear does go immune for like at least a half second when he pops his ultimate. I don't know if that's the steadfast presence is actually going to block that or not. I think it's not. I would need some confirmation on that, but that should be an interesting interaction.
I don't think it quite stops the Volibear ultimate, or at least I wouldn't know whether that's the case. I've never actually seen that interaction, so we'll get a chance to look at that in this one. I know it definitely doesn't stop the Zoe because that's a blink and it's not something that you can prevent from happening. But again, I still love the Poppy pick here. I think it's rather good.
Yeah.
Volibear, it still has to run up also, which is a really tough thing to do into the likes of Poppy, where you can eat him away. Orianna's got Shockwave, Aurelia's got Ultimate, Trundle's got Pillar. Like there's not a lot of room to just kind of run up on Maryville here, given the Poppy and the rest of the composition.
And going back to the Ori pick real quick, I know you weren't the biggest fan of it, but I kind of am in this situation. I think Wolf works really well when he's onto the control mage aspect, and this is something that he can stay safe, try and stay safe against the Zoe with. He's not going to have that much pressure. He will get some advantages in being able to control the ball, control the field, and get some early chip damage onto Zoe that could result in those early kills. It's not the most impressive on the grand scheme of things, but it works really well for the specific player.
Yeah, I think for what Wolfie is going to be capable of bringing, Orianna kind of fits his play style, being able to take that laning phase, get farmed, do really, really well, and pretty most of the time at least keep the laning phase relatively even, then come into late game with a lot of that shockwave pressure. The one problem I have with the Orianna is just how easy it is to aggress against it. So Poppy, you've got the Poppy. Top lane, you've got the Aurelia, who's got a good amount of mobility and CC. Orianna doesn't really have that. Orianna's pretty much just stuck like kind of sitting there with a Pantheon, a Callisto, a Volibear, a Lee Sin, and then a Zoe to deal with, which kind of feels like it's Wolfie against the world. We've seen that before against Radiance. When he played Syndra, he took I think 3 ganks within the first 15 minutes, but he still came out on top because of his ability to scale.
Yeah, and that was the big topic we were talking about before this match even started. When it comes to the mid lane matchup, it's that whole thing of scaling. You don't really see it on the side of Young Mid. You see it a lot more on the side of Wolf. And Orianna does provide that to some extent, more for the team fights in the later stages, especially when you get towards the Drake, the Baron. That Orianna ball, the presence of it alone, sometimes just has so much zone control in team fights.
Especially for things like the Callista and the Zoe, and even like Lee Sin in this particular case, who can play a little bit more on the outskirts of the fight. They have to be very careful about how they approach, because they can get just ripped to shreds from an Orianna ball, utilizing that shockwave into the W to put quite a bit of damage on them before they even start into the fight. And then, of course, you have to worry about the Aurelia jumping in or the Poppy jumping in with the ball, setting that up on your own, especially Callista. If Poppy jumps in and tackles Callista with the ball on, that's pretty much a dead Andy Bendy, unfortunately.
Yeah, it just takes one shockwave and, it's Niles. Like, what are you going to do about that? Well, that's draft for game number 3, all in the books, and very hyped draft once again for this third matchup, Maryville University versus Radiance. We are going to throw it over to a short break. When we return, we'll get into that matchup, but be sure to check out twitch.tv/risen_esports2 for that matchup of Gerb Nation versus Frostfire, still going on, casted by Lemons and Cubby. We'll be right back with more Risen Esports action. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Risen Esports Champions League, Maryville University versus Radiance. A very interesting draft we had unfold, and the most interesting part of it, we want to crutch on it so much, is that Poppy pick and how effective it is to pretty much almost the entire roster of Radiance.
I really love the Poppy pick here. Like I said, flexing something like this doesn't ever really seem like something that Maryville does that often. So seeing something like this, it just shows that their team is thinking in the background what it is that will make this composition really good. You've got low range, and the little amount of mobility you have on the very low range champions you've got is completely now countered by the likes of Poppy. So at minimum in the mid and late game like team fights and stuff, especially in the laning phase also, there's some open room to have to work with. So Andy, Bendy, and Cal ideally just want to get out of this lane. Like they just need to leave because there's very little room to have. Unless they're able to burn that steadfast presence for some reason and then get Avi, Young Mid, or Engo to come join them, because that will result in what is likely a very good play.
Yeah, I feel like it'll only be a couple of minutes before they're begging the top lane. Can we swap now, please? I'm done with this. You don't want to deal with a Poppy as Kalista, and might not want to deal with this invade either, because here comes Radiance trying to get some early advantages, and they're doing it off an invade, just barely going to be spotted off from value. Cow looking to walk in, stop the red buff from going a V. We'll back it up just a little bit and be able to secure that red. Thank you for the leash, Iconic. Forced back with 200 health.
Yeah, really rough situation. That's why you typically want more forward wards there. You want to be able to stand in the likes of the Trash. I know it's a little bit daunting, but even a ward there would have been able to more than spot that out. And at a minimum, they could have reset the red buff to make it more difficult for Avi to just snatch that one away. But either way, it's a little bit detrimental. I want to see if Avi's capable of maintaining both red buffs here instead of just handing one over to Iconic, or if he does, what is he going to get off the back of it?
I mean, you are going to have a pretty good tempo advantage over to a V, and you definitely love that if you're Lee Sin. And you can see it right now. V's rotating over towards the top side. Not the top side, but towards the mid side, excuse me. Trying to see if he can possibly set up a gank there. And that's the question you wanted answered. Is he going to go over towards his red side? Answer is going to be yes. Going to make sure he denies that from Iconic.
Really phenomenal expression of the level 1 here coming out, because we have talked about now the Poppy doing really well into the likes of the Pantheon and Kalista, but that is contingent on the fact that the W is there from Poppy. A few levels is there from Poppy first, maybe a little bit of tankiness as well, just before you're able to just get shredded by the likes of Andy Bendy. And so they, knowing this, they are able to take the stun from Cal level 1, the Ren from Andy Bendy level 1 with this Lee Sin, and they make that expression of skill in that jungle to make sure that that matchup goes better for Avi.
Ooh, and a nasty level 3 advantage coming out from Niles, utilizing that entire kit to just punish Ango. Shades of game number 2. All that being said, more pushing going on towards the bot side. Response coming out from Iconic as he heads over towards that top side as well. Potentially looking to set up a dive over here, going straight after Engo. Engo's able to get some damage of his own as a V races to try and help his teammate. There comes the flash bite, but a V shows up. It's going to be a 1-for-1 trade, first blood over to Iconic.
Yeah, Iconic able to capitalize on the damage dealt by Niles, which is rather nice. And you get first blood gold for yourself. You do give one over to Avi. But another thing is that wave crash there that Niles was able to shove in. So Engo loses a little bit in the 1v1. Once again, putting Niles in a pretty decent situation on the likes of the Aurelia early on to potentially look to take advantage of the laning phase. So now it's up to Avi to take that gold that he has gained during the course of this gank and put it to use on the rest of the map.
Yeah, all that being said, even though that shove did go off, it didn't put Engo too far behind. As you see, the wave just barely landing. He is going to lose out on a couple of minions, because even though it does look like he's ahead, there's still a complete wave there just waiting for Niles to start cashing in on. But it's still something. Engo was able to get an assist, so he's not falling behind against Niles, and that is the nightmare situation for Radiance if they end up in that situation just like Game 2.
Oh, absolutely. That would be really, really terrible if they ended up, especially since Volibear does so much worse as a tank champion than he does as kind of a damage stealer. So if you have to build like, you know, Sunfire into full tank rather than something like Trinity Force, the champion feels so much worse. So at least able to keep that damage of actually punishing Niles quite a bit with that E coming out.
Yeah, getting quite a bit of damage. Double Doran's Blade build, going for that early game. We talk about early. We talk about really early level 4 already harassing Niles over towards that top side. Keep up that type of tempo, but Iconic is just hovering over towards that top side as well. You know that Rift Scuttle was picked up earlier by a V, so there is plenty of vision there, and Engo's going to utilize that to be able to try and spot out and scout where Iconic might be.
I really like the idea here coming out from the bottom lane from Radiance. If they're able to actually make this kind of track card work against the bottom lane, it'll be big. Yeah, they're going to fall for it. Unfortunately, Value might actually step. Oh, he got him with a Q. So close.
Yeah, you hate to see it. Trying to set up the cheeky plays. Well, cheeky play going to be set up over towards the top side. Engo trying to get out of this rough situation. Doesn't have flash underneath the tower. Lots of damage coming in. Niles starting to get low. Will that final turret shot take him down? The answer is going to be no as the fight breaks over towards the bottom side. Bendy will fall to Cow. All meanwhile, it's going to be a 1-for-1 trade over towards the spot side. Another tower shot taken. Crazy fight to break out in this early game.
Andy Bendy, you're a stud, man. It's so few people can kind of have that passive nature or kind of use the forethought to make sure you're not bouncing around with Ballista. He hits that S key and is just in pure auto range of Value. Value doesn't think to move out of the auto range because he doesn't need to sit there and just tank that from Andy Bendy. Instead, Andy Bendy just hits still, doesn't have to worry about that steadfast presence, who literally was Shady just literally sitting on top of his character model, making sure he couldn't jump around, but it didn't matter. Well played from Andy Bendy to find that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the trick right there. If you don't get out of range, you're not going to do the hop. You don't need a stutter step around. You are golden if you could just stand still. The question is, are you going to be able to do that a little bit earlier? The answer there, a little bit later, excuse me, the answer there is probably going to be a no, but if he can take advantage of this as much as possible early on, he's going to set himself up for a good mid game.
That he is. And this is an early game composition coming out from Radiance, so the more that you can express that in the earlier stages of the game, the better off you're going to be. I will say I would have rather see the kill come out, but level 6 for now is actually putting in Go in maybe a rough situation. Alright.
And you can see that right there, Niles taking that Executioner's Calling first as well, over towards that top side, setting Engo on another recall. Will not have the teleport. Slammed against the wall will be Andy Bendy. Got to be careful about that Poppy.
Yeah, really, really well played there, and a little bit of a CS discrepancy, but certainly the Poppy now able to, with that additional armor from the Ninja Tab, make herself a little bit better known in this laning phase, so look for Shady to run that. They still do have the power of the Pantheon and the Callista's damage in this early game to worry about, as well as the Zoe still having a little bit of pressure mid lane against the tier Orianna, so that means that Avi is able to sit in this bottom side river for relatively free, but the roam up is coming from Wolfie to check the Rift Herald, or at least get some vision in that top side river, so maybe Iconic's going to be able to trade.
You can see right there a V going straight for the Drake. 1500 health remains on it. And Iconic headed towards that top side. Just gonna grab his blue buff for the time being, but Engo, he's constantly been doing this in this game thus far. He's been roaming out looking for whatever plays he can find, and he goes straight after Wolfie. Gets a good chunk of damage on him, but needs to back off. It's gonna be a 2-on-1. Young cannot get there. Engo gonna use the ultimate to be able to disable the tower and walk on out to safety. A fight breaking out towards the bottom side. Cow takes a lot of punishment, falls to sub 200 health, but will be okay. You can see just how tense this game is turning out to be.
Really impressive stuff from Engo to somehow slip out from that tower. I do think that this wave pushing in is kind of bad for Cal because they need this under the tower if they want to be able to reset properly here. Oh, why are you... Oh, there's Don't For Die.
More and more in, and Shady steadfast presence right on the money. Just annihilates Cal once again. Keeps happening, but that's what we're expecting. We're expecting that from the Poppy, and we're expecting more tempo to come out of Maryville as they're looking to chase down a V. You will get to the Scuttle movement speed boost and be perfectly fine.
Yeah, fantastic little play. They try to set up the dive. They're really low health, which is why I was curious whether even trying that play in the first place. And Shady, literally, you could just see the expression on the Pantheon almost of just how, fall on the face, how they fell on their face during the course of that with the Pantheon jumping into Poppy with the W up. The teleport from Niles was also used, which I think was a little bit of overcommitment, but Niles really doing well in the laning phase, it doesn't actually cost them that much.
Good reaction time coming out of Shady, because there's been so many times where they've tried to bait out the steadfast presence, and he just waits. He waits so closely, just waiting for that one frame that looks like he's about to get hopped on. He times it well, and results in that kill with Cow, who definitely just is not enjoying his day.
Not at all. Really tough situation for the Pantheon to be in, especially since the first 15-20 minutes of the game are really where your strength entirely lie, and after that point you really start to fall by the wayside in terms of damage. You basically become a ward-killing kind of frontliner with your E being most of the damage soak that you've got. My one problem with Maryville at the moment is that their kills have all gone into Trundle and Poppy, unfortunately, rather than the Ophelias, the Orianna, or the top lane Aurelia here, but either way, they're still doing well at kind of mitigating the pressure that would come out from what should be an earlier game composition.
I mean, the one thing you can take from it is even though the kills are going in the wrong spot, you're still getting CS advantages, and specifically more towards the top side, which we should probably see Iconic heading towards now. Set up that dive towards Engo, who's been struggling against Niles' Aurelia. Since Niles got this Aurelia, it's just been beautiful display after beautiful display, and now Iconic feels the momentum. The wave is pushing towards his top side. He wants to set up a dive.
Yeah, he has the Rift Herald as well, so if they're able to make this work against Engo, they're going to be very, very heavily punished. And watch Avi on the bottom side. He's looking to punish. That's a really hard dive to make happen against the likes of the Poppy Aphelios.
Ooh, there comes the damage, and there comes the pain. Now Cal looking to jump onto Shady. Shady will get the knockup. Lots of damage coming in. Slammed against the wall. Shady will not be able to thwart with the steadfast press. Instead, going to go down as Value tries to find a vengeance kill. Will not be able to score it on the top side. Maryville University summons Shelly, looking to go ahead and grab that first brick as Shockwave goes out. Meanwhile, in the mid, Young critically low. It's going to be Maryville University pressing the tempo and getting the advantage.
And I think were Value not completely out of mana here, he would probably end up getting a multiple kills on bottom side because there's so many people with low health. Avi and Cal both kind of down.
Ooh, nice dagger on that crowd control.
Yeah, fantastic little play coming out from the likes of Avi and Cal. Sorry, I had to sneeze. Being able to find that kill underneath the tower. And they don't get the tower, which is huge. And they actually get two on top side with the likes of that Rift Herald. So the massive play in favor. Again, it's so difficult to dive against the Poppy and the Aphelios. Even though you're able to get 2 kills, it stalled you so long, you get nothing. Niles, no!
Yeah, Niles just casually grabbing a kill. V will pick up the scraps of that one, but that was a little bit too casual in my opinion. He just walked up to him, absolutely fearless, does not even think of Engo as a threat.
Yeah, I mean, they're 12 minutes in, he's up 50 CS. Actually, the bottom side, we see more play against Poppy here.
Yeah, good use of the dash to land it onto a minion to be able to get to safety, but Poppy isn't in the range to utilize that steadfast presence and can't get the reaction in time. There is a lot of punishment that can come out. The whole kit is based around that steadfast presence when you take it into this comp.
It's almost a counter-engage option here, making sure you have to anticipate where they're going to be, or you have to kind of plan out your aggression here. Here's Iconic up on the side. Cal.
Ooh, Cal, beautiful. Just in an instant, in a heartbeat, takes down Shady. But the fight's going to continue. Support for support, and Value will get taken down. Iconic now on the run. And there it is. Radiance, they're finding their footing. They're finding some leverage in taking down the bot lane of Maryville University.
Cal, that was just absolute monstrous. Being able to find a W against the Poppy when you're not expecting it's easier than some champions, but still not very simple. That flash W to be able to get within range to make it basically instantaneous, so Shady has no reaction, instantly killing him and allowing a lot of this mobility to come into this fight. Really would save the day here for the likes of Cal. Not to mention the TP from Engo. He's got to get out of top lane somehow, and he finds some play on the bottom side of the map. They don't get Iconic, but at minimum they make a play happen.
Ooh, Shockwave in the mid lane. Shady didn't have the flash. For a moment there, I thought he was going to flash over the wall and just slam Young against it, but only Hex flash available. You still got Young out of the situation, which is going to be great for Maryville because he gets set up for this Drake ticket completely for free.
But they do. Tie the Dragons 1-1. And again, for the early game composition is pretty good. Here's Hex Flash onto Niles, though.
Hex Flash over the wall, looking to take down Niles, and going to be an easy kill, plant out quite well. And you can see it time and time again. They use the dash, get the stun from the Pantheon, and then use the Dragon's Rage to make sure that there's no follow-up flash or crowd control or anything to get them to safety.
If they've been able to group up and find some pretty solid plays across the map, they're going to be able to get their first tower here, but that's kind of inlaid within the strength of the composition from Radiance. This isn't really their massive macro, it's just them playing as best they can to the champions they drafted, but this team does continue to fall off really hard, and Andy, Bendy, Cal, Avi's damage, even Engo's damage will really start to fall off. Young Mid's really the only one with great scaling damage, and you're letting the Orianna free farm, you're getting this Aurelia pretty much just devastate the Bully Bear in the side lane matchup, and even the Aphelios, well, yeah, he's been pressured off a little bit, will still be very effective against the late game team fight of things like the Callista.
And this is one of the frustrating things you're seeing for Young right now. Every time Young uses that ultimate, Wolfie will put the ball exactly where he expects the teleport to be, and he's able to get that counter damage. Now, finally, we see Young able to get something in these exchanges that have been going on with the Paddle Stars, but that is why Wolf has been doing so well. And look at this, an engagement coming out. Shady trying to run away. V will grab the kill, and that is control over the Rift Herald going over to Radiance.
Very quick there, and that's part of the reason why you do like to see Blue Ward, because it gives you instantaneous information about where enemies are at. and they don't have that coming into the river, so they end up getting caught out by the brush, really get control of topside, and slowly Radiance reclaiming some of the map. The lanes weren't going phenomenally for them, so they instead start skirmishing a little bit and little by little bit, and it's working much better for their team.
The pressure Niles put on over towards that bot side, forcing the ultimate out of Engo. All meanwhile, Shelly is going to be summoned. This charge will finish off at the tower, opening the rift a little bit more for Radiance. And that's what you want when you have the Zoe. You want to play that vision, you want to get it deep, and you want to utilize all these walls, all this control to poke in that damage, to get the paddle stars and sleepy trouble bubbles. Young should start to open up the map now. Should. But we still have plenty of responses over at Maryville.
I hope that's the case. And again, that's the late game option, so you really want to see more gold start getting flooded into the pockets of Young mid. So far, it's been a little bit just about plays coming through. It's been about lapses of vision and then outnumbers coming through from the side of Radiance, but that's a little bit of a bandage compared to their late game composition, and so I'm expecting that to be removed slowly, because they're even in gold, they're even in terms of dragons, they're actually down in towers right now. So as long as Maryville continues with not losing too much, or at least gaining back some of the stuff that they lost, late game the composition goes in their hands.
Radiance setting up over towards his top side. It's the final outer tower they need to take down, and looking to set up something sneaky. You can see that ward placed down. They want to spot out where value's coming in, but retaliation's going to be there. Teleport being channeled, being used right here. Well spotted out. Niles going to join the fight. Try to get the stun onto Andy Bendy, but there comes the ultimate. Will find the knockup. Cow able to lock down Niles, and there comes the pain. Andy Bendy will grab the kill onto the legend Niles.
Yeah, the teleport's really aggressive, and yes, even if you sneak into that brush, I'm not sure that it's absolutely perfect, because you always have the ultimate to come through from the likes of the Callista to pull in Cow, but in that case, they actually spotted out and were ready for it, and Value wasn't quite there. I think if Value shows up to that, and then you teleport in so that the Callista's forced backwards, otherwise you're going to be running headfirst into Aphelios, that's the problem that you end up running into. But instead, Niles goes a little bit early, and that actually gives way to potential dive coming out. Iconic's going to spot it out, thankfully, but this is still really rough.
Yeah, a lot of damage went onto Iconic right there. He's not going to be at full health to be able to take this fight. And you can see it was very close to being even worse than that. If a V got vision a tad bit earlier, Cow could have hopped over the wall and got that lockdown onto Iconic. Would have been a lot of follow-up damage to deal with, but Iconic's still alive right now, able to bring the rest of the squad towards this top side and defend this top lane tower.
Yeah, thankfully, Radiance has continued to be able to kind of prevent any aggressive plays from Maryville coming out. They're starting to wrestle back some of the control over the top of the map. They got 1,000 gold lead, and despite kind of their early game composition not having the scaling, they are doing a good job of expressing these champions as best as possible. They're staying away from the Poppy. They're finding solos or duos in the side lane that are able to be aggressed against, and they're able to make the plays happen when they're available.
Now with Dragon spawning quite soon, you can see both teams starting to posture up towards that area. Gotta like Radiance's chances in this. They've been able to play this type of playstyle quite well so far, as they're looking to try and find the engagement onto Niles, who gets Dragon's raged away. Shady looking to jump in and put himself disruption. Out comes the shockwave. 2 claims Maryville. So far sitting pretty in this fight as they go after Engo. Backing out of V, getting bit in the backside by Iconic. Chased away is Radiance. Maryville finally able to find a team fight win. Value's gonna be able to face tank one of those paddle stars and make sure he keeps Shady alive.
Nice little play there to block the paddle star, and a great play from Maryville also, because over the course of these last few minutes, it's been Radiance kind of running the map, but finally we get to see a glimpse at what the 5-on-5 looks like, and you see just how powerful this composition can be with things like that. The Moonlight Vigil coming through with Gravitum attached to it was humongous to set up that shockwave and really tear through the likes of Cow and Andy Bendy, who just now respawned. Good control of the bottom side river, and a good fight from Maryville gets them the second dragon of the game, and slowly they've now reclaimed the gold lead here.
Having that gold lead, having those odds turn in favor of them, it's now starting to look better and better. You do have that late game that we were talking about, and the threat was there. Their team fight is great. You watch that shockwave, you watch where the ball goes. It was Shady being the ball delivery system that time and getting it towards the back line. That is what we're going to see more and more of. And a V trying to counter jungle almost gets caught out in the process by Value.
Yeah, thankfully Cow is here to be a little bit of a kind of a deterrent to make sure there is no follow-up play, but they're slowly moving up towards this Baron area, trying to recapture the vision around here. I know with the likes of Aurelia and Aphelios, you should have a relatively fast one, not to mention with things like Poppy, if they even try to make something happen. Here's Wolfie trying to get caught out though. Huge shockwave!
A great shockwave to go through, but Wolfie is starting to run low. Sleepy Trouble Bubble goes out. Sonic Wave will not land, and Wolfie leaves to see another day.
Oh, the stress levels went through the roof right there for poor Wolfie, but now in goes into the trunk, and now it's not going to hit his veto.
Yeah, I felt that one right there. That weighs on your heart when you see those paddle stars come in. That health so low. Can they escape? Find out next time on Dragon Ball Z.
For sure. You just, like, little by little, they trickled in more and more danger. So first it was, like, Cal's ultimate, and you're like, oh, and then he stuns it, and you're like, oh, he's like, shockwave, and you're like, oh, thank God. And then they're like, oh, and here comes Lee Sin, and they're like, oh, no. And then he has cleanse for the bubble, he has, like, the flash comes out to make sure he views the Q, like, every little thing just piled up on each other. Right there.
No, yes. No, yes.
Exactly.
Now Maryville starting to group up here. They're going for an engagement over towards the mid lane, and Niles is gonna flash in to try and find it. Cow getting slowed down, gets stunned up, but he's gonna be able to mitigate a lot of that damage, but still too much though, as Value finds the snipe. Shady going for the back line. Mid lane turret forced to be conceded as Maryville find their way over. Be careful if you're young right here. You're watching that ball, the shockwave comes out. Another kill picked up for Maryville. All meanwhile, Andy Bendy in the top lane taking down that outer top lane tower.
That could have been a lot worse for Radiance. Cal once again makes a hero stun up against Niles, which prevents him from jumping in onto Young Mid. And if Young Mid dies, I don't think they have the wave clear or the pick potential to actually push them off second tower. Best case they got is like Volibear engaging, but I don't think they fight 5 members off like that. And thankfully, Kalista trades top tower, but they still fall a lot of gold because of the members that they lose. Cal and Abby bopping down, they lose mid lane tower, which is huge for the vision score here coming out from the likes of Maryville. So big play from them, despite some of the good response plays coming out from Radiance.
Yeah, now just about 2k ahead, just over 2k ahead will be the squad of Maryville University. And we're seeing that team fight come through. We're seeing how everything plays out when it comes together into the team fight aspect. And it's something that Radiance just can't really match. They're still going for the picks. They're still going for the map play. They want the vision. They want to catch out people in rotation. Maryville University, they're not conceding that. Pressure on all the time.
Yeah, making sure. I think they've also started to realize that the more separated that they are, the more at risk they are of end up losing their lives. So they're trying to play together a bit more. I do want to see Shady's positioning kind of slow down a bit, because it looks like he's playing more as a diver and less like a protector, and I'd rather see him as a protector in this particular sense.
Ooh, the shockwave not flash. Andy Bendy will go down, and so will Cow. So will the bot lane of Radiance. And just on the very tip of that shockwave, but here comes the B. Look to go after Shady. Sleeping Trouble Bubble comes in. Not going to find much else right after that, as Value is able to bring some backup.
So Shady, he threw the W late, and he threw his ultimate during the course of the bubble, but he still walks out because he's just too tanky. And Contact playing really well. I thought Andy, Benny, and Cal were honestly going to catch out Wolfie because he didn't have summoner spells, and he was in a really rough spot. But fortunately, the TP and Iconic's positioning, as well as that massive shockwave catching Andy Benny on the brink of the flash range, was really clutch to make sure that while, yes, he dropped, he's able to trade back quite a bit of play against the other two.
V looking to try and get some vision here, but he doesn't know Shady is hiding in this bush. Shady trying to play this out in a very sneaky way. You can see the tension right there as the Edge of Night instantly popped by V.
Yeah, Shady's just camping brushes to find these wall stuns, isn't he? Oh, there we go.
V, I'm not sure if that was the right choice. He's going to take the flash towards the back end, but too far, too deep, too caught. Iconic will pick up that kill, but that sets up priority of the Drake over to Maryville.
Yeah, they do have 35 seconds left until Lee Sin is even up, and they only have 10 seconds before the Dragon's going to be there. So it should be a relatively free Drake again. It's setting themselves up on that Ocean Soul point. And, so, you know, this team from Radiance has to be very careful because they're starting to lose a lot of the edge that they've got in team fights. Their pick potential is being mitigated by a lot better moving together on the side of Maryville as well. And then Shady's also starting to camp around in brushes, trying to make these plays happen, set up his team to find their own pick potential across the board, which is really big stuff.
Almost that shockwave lands. The pings were going out from Radiance to start up the Baron. They did not feel safe enough going for it. Maryville University were the wiser. That's why Wolfie was towards the mid lane trying to spot out what Radiance was up to. And now that they know Radiance was unable to do the Baron, you can see they head straight there just to get some vision control to ensure that Radiance can't do any sneaky plays.
Nothing like that. And obviously, with the likes of the Callista and the Lee Sin, you have a really, really good execute damage on something like the Baron. But at this point, I don't think you kill it quite fast enough. Like, Callista's damage falls off a little bit, and then Volibear has some good consistent damage, but builds a little more tank to that Bramble Vest to try to prevent Niles from just beating him in the 1v1. And so now, you're kind of bereft of just that really, really high DPS that can get you a fast Baron. You've got great execute. But until the point comes where you need to execute it, it's going to be rather slow, and it's going to open up for Maryville to be able to make a response play.
And here we go, Niles going straight after Engo. Dashing away will be Niles trying to dance this one out, but here comes the Stormbringer. Engo looking to get more damage in as the Vanguard's Edge goes out. There comes the Sonic Wave into the Resonating Strike. The engagement's still there. Niles is fighting tooth and nail to be able to survive this one, and here comes Shady, but all for naught as Niles will eventually fall. Shady able to get one Vengeance kill. The fight here between the Lee Sin and Poppy, there's not much you really want to see when it comes to that, so let's focus on the mid lane. Shockwave comes out young, gets pulled in by the Shockwave. Sleepy Trouble Bubble will be thwarted thanks to that cleanse, but here comes the ultimates. Here comes the Power Cow, able to do a lot of blocking to make sure that Radiance is going to be out of these team fights anytime soon. But look at Shady. He's a support. He doesn't care. He's going to play like he's the carry of this squad, going right after a beat. This is a very close fight. He will pick up his shield and grab the shield, but still, they're swinging tooth and nail at each other. What an intense fight between these two very, very low damage dealers, but the minions get enough to do the job. V will grab the kill. A very slow one at that on the Shady. Andy Bendy takes a lot of damage. That ball's going out, doing some work, but overall, a very, very prolonged fight coming out on the Rift.
Shady finally gets his hands on a champion that isn't just like a pure support. You can play a little bit more aggressive, and he's having a field day with it right now, playing the 1v1 against it was a 6-kill Lee Sin. Like, how do you make a play against 6-kill Lee Sin as the Poppy there? But somehow almost made that work. If he had a couple of the cooldowns, might have been good. The rest of the map, not particularly taken advantage of, despite the double, both members, or two members on both sides, being committed to bottom side. But here it is that they were shoved out due to some of the poke damage that had come out. Andy Bendy, Cow, and Young Mid all got pushed out of this bottom side, or this top side river. And so now Baron control goes the way of Maryville in very, very heavy fashion, with a lot of the warding, and Niles also being on this top side, having plenty of the sustain to play in the 1v1.
Oh yeah, it's lit up like Christmas over on that Baron side. You can see how many wards they have. 3 control wards just in the river side alone, denying as much vision as possible from Radiance. And that is scary because there's so much damage on the side of Maryville. They can take Baron in a very timely manner.
That they can. The risk now becomes also, though, if Radiance wants to play this game with Maryville, this is a tough game for them to win, because they either give up Ocean Soul, and then they can take Baron, maybe, if they're lucky enough, if they have enough damage and their execute is there, and then maybe they have to take an ensuing fight afterwards, depending on how fast it is, or you give up the Baron to a team that's already going to have late game, potentially, and then you take the Dragon for yourselves, which doesn't seem ideal to give them more momentum on the map by being able to take towers and siege up and such. It looks like they're going to try to grab this Baron before there is ability, but again, they just cleared out all those wards. Everybody on Maryville knows this is going to happen, and this is a slow Baron take.
Yeah, Radiance looking to take this because they know that Wolf is not able to join the fight, so Cow being thrown in, but punted away. Shady able to throw away 2 members, and now the kite battle comes in for Maryville as they fight tooth and nail. Young will be able to grab one kill, but look at Wolf go, look at Niles go, look at Value go, all able to pick up a kill apiece and wipe the floor with Radiance. A double over to Niles, and they're gonna clean up the rift. The reward, Baron.
That fight was immaculate for Maryville. They're able to kite backwards. They're able to make the plays happen. The huge stalling tactics from Shady and from Iconic. That pillar prevented Avi from getting into the fight. That ultimate prevented a couple of their frontliners from staying in the fight. So they stall so long, and finally they get the perfect setup for a shockwave into a Vanguard's Edge coming out from the likes of Niles and Wolfie, who just completely cleaned the fight from that point on. Radiance, they threw all of their bodies and everything they had directly at the side of Maryville, and Maryville just stepped on them right then and there.
And Maryville are not done collecting. It's time for the tax returns. Filed them in at the start of the game, and now they are cashing in because they see a Dragon Soul in their sights, and that's what they're going to grab. You're going to have the Dragon Soul, the Baron, the siege of a lifetime to have to deal with if you're Radiance.
And and this team, it just got so powerful. They're sitting now on a 6,000 gold lead across the board. You have Rabadons completed for Wolfie. You have the 3-item spike with Death Stance completed for Value. You have, at least the Phage completed for Niles to be a lot more mobile in some of these fights. So now you're hitting all of your item breakpoints. The enemy don't have the gold or the stats to really kind of prevent the check, and you've got Ocean Soul just in case an engagement does go against you. This is looking really, really good for Maryville.
Shady head flash over the wall. Out comes the shockwave. Not sure what's really going on here. Cal wants to jump in, and he's just destroyed for it. So is the rest of the bot lane of Radiance, as they're on full retreat. I think they know they've completely lost this match. It's gonna be a triple kill. Going over to Wolfie, walking into the door like they own the place, just dancing around all the BM. Maryville University, they're looking to close out game number 3.
And in fantastic fashion, once again, Radiance, they did their best to try to exploit the fact that they had early game composition. They weren't able to make it happen fast enough, or they didn't do enough early on to shut down the members of Maryville to prevent their team fight from coming through. And in fact, I want to really mention Wolfie, because his team fight's been fantastic all the way through the game on this Orianna.
Yeah, absolutely. Here comes the last... Oh my God! Stop it! They have a family, man! Maryville University dominate game number 3.
And this is the second game in a row now that we've seen Niles just absolutely pop off in the side lane as Aurelia. So first thing first, how about Radiance? You throw immediately Aurelia off the board. And then, I mean, they completely left mid lane open. And yeah, you've got, like, Wolfie there, but his kind of bread and butter is to sit there, farm for a while, and then just dominate team fights. And these shockwaves were humongous in fight after fight. Yeah, Shady and Iconic and Value were setting up so well, but he was hitting them when he needed to.
Yeah, Wolfie was amazing on the Orianna. I was digging the pick a lot. I didn't know I was going to dig it this much, though. Some of that ball placement, the constant mind games with Young, punishing him with those command attacks as well as those command dissonances, and then, of course, the neutral objectives. Goodness gracious, is ball placement on point. Wolfie, definitely a stud. Niles, another stud. I think it's time to ban Aurelia, my friend.
Yeah, I'd say that'd be the case. And on the side of Radiance, they're starting to lose, I think, identity in my opinion, because Avi, game number 1, just controlled objectives, and everyone collapsed around objectives as often as possible. In game 2, they didn't really have anything like that. Avi was looking for kills more, and in this one, Avi did really well punishing alongside things like Andy Bendy, like Cal, like Ingo, like when the bubbles hit from Young mid. But the problem was they miss a lot of resources trying to put the bot lane ahead, trying to get Andy Bendy and Cal rolling early, and it simply didn't work because Engo and Young mid, they had no interaction whatsoever with the likes of Niles and Wolfie, especially once the late game came. And Andy, Bendy, and Cal, they fell off the face of the earth. Shady wasn't even the big reason for that. It was just that they got out team fighted because they got out damaged, and they lost a lot of that scaling that they had they didn't really draft for.
Yeah, and then going back to Engo as well, he is going the Volibear, he is going to the Trinity Force, which is a very expensive build. I mean, the moment you start going behind in a Trinity Force build against a Trinity Force build, it's pretty much the end right there. I mean, Niles was able to get the Blade of the Rune King and the Trinity Force quite early. He went for the Executioner's Calling on top of that, so making sure to really nullify that lane and make sure he got his dominance to where he can go all over the map and be that threat that we know Niles to be.
And when it pairs up in those team fights, it does really well. When it's in the solo lane, it seems to be dominating against Engo. I think finally Maryville has found the recipe for themselves that works well. They're able to take a champion like this Aurelia. They're able to put Wolfie on something that scales, and then they try to get some counterpick to prevent early pressure in bot lane. Seems to work out for them rather well. And when Iconic is rolling also, once again, 5-1, 17, 26 kills. That is huge for this team. 22 out of 26 total assists. That's when your team really starts to look good. Keep Iconic rolling, and you keep running in the series.
So that's game number 3 in the books, and now we are at match point. If Maryville win one more, they have booked their ticket to the finals. So definitely a hype matchup to come. Be sure to stay tuned for more, because we are going to take a short break. When we return, we'll get into game number 4 of Maryville University versus Radiance. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Risen Esports Champions League, Maryville University versus Radiance. Game point now for Maryville University as we head into this draft of game number 5.
And for the first time, we actually see a swap of sides where Radiance is going to be taking the blue side and Maryville is going to be stepping onto the red side, but that doesn't seem to have affected the bans all that much. The only thing left up so far is
Graves.
Karma, and that's immediately taken off, yeah.
Graves and Volibear left up this time as well. So Valios going to be the first pick coming out for Radiance, still prioritizing heavily onto that ADC role. Response waiting to come out of Maryville University, but as we said, there's a lot of juicy picks up right now. That Graves, definitely a spicy one that Maryville might want to go to. They do love grabbing that champion. It was a little bit shaky in some of in that game number 1, but yep, that's the one that's going to be locked in, as well as the Ezreal to get that safe solo laning.
Really not shocked to see the Ezreal. I still think, yeah, that's the best champion I've seen Value play for the most part. I kind of hit that point every time I talk about it because he's just so good at it, and he plays the solo lane a lot more. The Graves I'm not super in love with because, again, I liked it a lot better on blue side when they were banning it away because I don't think that it's super good for Maryville when they design their composition around Graves specifically, but they obviously feel confident in it, and having the Ezreal feels a lot better, I guess, alongside it.
I mean, what has been the story that I've seen out of Iconic is when he does get the Graves, he can have a very profound early game impact. Especially that's what we saw in their last series against Supernova. That being said, though, if he can't get that early game impact, it all just falls apart. And that's what we've been seeing out of a V. He's been able to match that tempo that Iconic brings and completely punish him from being able to do those early game plays. And now we're seeing more spicy picks come in as Bard gets locked in over for Radiance, Jace for Maryville.
The Bard makes sense because it's both a takeaway from Shady to make sure he can't roam on it with the Ezreal being in lane, and also really roams very heavily here for Cal, which he does very well, especially, I think they won actually game number 1 off the back of his Bard, which is really important stuff. Now, Maryville, they finally take Jace. This is a very seldom seen pick, but it's something that Niles is amazing at. I'm curious if there's flexibility with Wolfie into the mid lane, but I would love to see Niles grab this one for himself. They banned out the Malphite. I expect that they go back to something like something else that they don't want to play against and protect that pick in the top side.
Yeah, and it's not just a Niles heavy pick. You're also denying it away from Engo, all meanwhile, who has been playing it a lot in his last couple of wins. So taking that away, it's also a really good top laner that can carry from that role. So it is a juicy pick to take away Malphite, Ornn, and Blitzcrank, all bound away Radiance. One more band to go before we head into phase 2.
So the Ornn taken away, make sure to get that team fighting presence off the map. I'm a little terrified right now for the damage portfolio of Maryville, since the Ezreal's got a little bit of magic damage and Jace has a very small amount, but for the most part, it's a very AD and auto attack centric kind of composition coming out here from their team. So they need magic damage, and ideally they need CC, because right now they're very limited in that regard as well.
And I just want to point out, by the way, this is a little bit more of a small thing, but I'm looking at Blitzcrank, I'm looking at Nautilus, and I noticed they both hook from the same side. They're like doing the same pose in that little ban splash art.
I wonder if any other champion share that same kind of... Oh, okay.
There's Pike.
Okay.
You're gonna ruin it for us.
Yeah, they're gonna be able to see. Actually, he's reaching out the same hand as well with that like right hand kind of. I think if you saw the full profile, maybe we get that. I'm just really curious because yes, you have good execute from the Pike, and it's... this is one of the best champion Shady's plays, just hands down. He's very mechanically inclined at the Pike and roams all over the place and will absolutely pressure the same as the Bard. But again, this damage output right now is so AD heavy on the side of Maryville that it's very rough.
Maybe we could see the Thresh. I mean, the Poppy's locked in, so it's... The Bard's locked in, excuse me, so that's pretty abysmal. But I just want to see one more Hook champion to complete this like conspiracy theory that all splash arts for Hook champions look like that. But,
you gotta highlight that Hook part of him.
Yeah, I gotta look back on the other drafts, and yeah, it's just no. He's kind of standing a little bit more with his left shoulder forward. Meanwhile, Orianna getting hovered in.
Our focus on Hook champions has distracted us from this draft, unfortunately. Yeah, the Orianna, they grab onto Poppy, so you have a little bit of Baldur. It's actually really derivative of what we saw last time from Maryville, having very similar composition and that strength. The big difference being the early pressure from something like Bard and Lee Sin is really good to get Aphelios and Orianna ahead in the game.
And this is an interesting pick right here. Wolfie? Actually, wait. He changed it. He juked me out. I was getting excited for the Azir, and he switched back to Zoe, and there comes all my despair every time I see that champ. Oh well, it's Zoe.
Yeah, it is Zoe, and I really like Azir, and I'm kind of upset because I haven't seen Maryville go back to the Azir, and it's arguably one of Wolfie's better champions, and I think it's really strong right now, especially into Orianna, which you actually have a good amount of early pressure against with your soldiers. But this is another really good pick for Wolfie. If you go to champions that he's played for a very long time consistently, I remember back to like 2019 like ULOL championships or something of the sort, if I recall, when they won back in the day, maybe it was 2018 or something. He pulled that Zoe even when no one else was playing it because it's just something that he loves to play. So I expect this to be a champion he shows a lot of comfort on, and hopefully he can capitalize on a lot of this damage coming out from the rest of his team.
Yeah, it still plays very similarly to the control mage style of Azir, Syndra, Ori, stuff that Wolfie works really well on. But the matchup this time is going to be Young. And the thing about this matchup is Young, you don't really see him as much onto the control mages, onto things that, go more for the late game team fights more than anything else. So it's going to be an interesting turn of events to see how they choose to change up their style here.
And we've seen this before also, as in, we had the Syndra and LeBlanc, kind of the flip matchup back and forth between the two because they both play this. And we saw this matchup flipped on its head last time, where it was Wolfie piloting the Orianna, and it was actually Young piloting the Zoe. And the Zoe just got bullied out for the most part, especially during the laning phase. Yeah, I think Orianna maybe got one play or one bad trade here or there. But for the most part, it was very Orianna favorite. And I'm curious if the way that Young mid plays Orianna is the same kind of as what we saw last time from Wolfie's play into the likes of the Zoe with his Orianna himself, and whether that kind of comes through, or if Wolfie knows the matchup better, or if Young mid knows the matchup better, and they can show that during the laning phase and their ability to kind of play against their opponent.
So the thing that's going to pop out to me is now the win conditions that we got to start looking at, right? When we look at Radiance, we're looking at the Lee Sin, we're looking at the Bard, we're seeing that kind of duo roam that Radiance has pulled off in the past before that they've been able to find success with. Now, if that doesn't succeed this time, this could be it right here. This could be the whole entire thing just completely thrown into the grave. They do have a lot of late game they can work with, but those champions just scream, we need to be put online and we need to get going quickly because Niles is not going to wait, Niles is not going to wait. Value's not going to wait. He's on his very, very special Ezreal. Nice hair on Ezreal, by the way. Value, best hair in North American Amateur. I'm going to throw that out there as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it right there. If Radiance can't get a hold of the game early, they have nothing to really anchor these late game carries to get to that stage of the game.
Now, I am very terrified because either A, you have to go very, very positive, and I think that's workable with the likes of Lee Sin and Poppy and Bard in the early game to set up Orianna and Aphelios for a lot of success. The other thing they're capable of doing is they can throw this challenge over to Maryville. Maryville has very low kind of CC. The range is very high, but this composition is one that if you get on top of, you can kill a lot of people really quick. If you get a good shockwave on the 3-4 members, they're going to be eviscerated. You combine that with a Moonlight Vigil, and they will die. There is very little you can do about it on Maryville's side. So they have to play a very specific way if they're relatively even, compared to if they're also ahead or if they're, they're behind or whatever it might be. But in this case, I think a full damage composition needs to be fought into, so they have to have priority of river, they have to have priority of the neutral objective pits, and so early game is really important for both sides here, and I think that's going to be what we're watching for. First 5-10 minutes of the game probably help dictate where the pace is going to go.
All right, draft of game number 5 now completely done. This could be the last game right here. Maryville looking to close this out. Radiance looking to survive. We're going to find out who wins in just a moment as we throw it over to a break. And when we return, we'll get into this game, this semifinals matchup, Maryville University versus Radiance. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Risen Esports Champions League. Match point here in the semifinals matchup of Maryville University versus Radiance. And a very interesting comp to come through here. We were talking about it a lot during the break. We really like what you have on the side of Maryville University, the Jace, the Ezreal, the Zoe. They can make life hell over for the composition of Radiance.
Yeah, if you don't get Young Mid and Andy Bendy really good space to work with things like the Lee Sin, the Bard, and the Poppy, you're just going to get rained down on with all the damage that's going to be coming in. Not to mention, if you get tagged with any one ability, especially like a Paddle Star coming in from Wolfie, that's pretty much an instant execute coming in from Shady, and he's going to get in, and he's going to find at least one or two of those during this game.
And it's pretty tricky to be able to set up a shockwave against the composition of Maryville University. I mean, Ezreal, he's always going to be in the back popping those Mystic shots, as well as having the Arcane Shift to be able to get away from those. Zoe is just a tricky bag of worms in her own right, but look at this going on here with the invade. Cal going to use the Magical Journey to be able to get away, but it's going to be Magical Journey taken as the first skill.
It really hampers the early game ability of Cal. So now you're not going to get either Q or W until level 3. And I think, honestly, if you're at this junction, you're going to have to go Q level 2 so you don't have the heal packs, which has always been kind of the staple of the Bard, especially now when you throw heal packs down in the mid lane. So, Young Mid's not going to have that little boon to his advantage of being able to trade and such. You're not going to have that bot lane either. And then, of course, the invade also led a little bit of pressure to that bottom side. They weren't able to see whether or not Avi was there, but they have a little bit of information in the fact that no one came to respond to their play against Cal. They didn't drop a ward either, which is really unfortunate, but had they done so, they would have known that Avi was starting on top side here.
I mean, I believe they should still know that he's starting top side. For Cal to be that far forward just looks like he's looking out more than actually trying to set up a leash as Wolfie. Well, we talked about it, what Orianna does when you're trying to set up these Paddle Stars as a Zoe. That is the punishment right there.
Absolutely, a little bit tough to go through. Back to level 2 for Cal. From those chats, he's just getting bullied down here in that bottom lane. He gets pulled in by Shady, who's hit a couple of nice Qs already in this game against Cal, and Cal not going to have the most fun time.
And we're seeing that clear strategy that we saw in game number 1 as well. The blue side full clear for both the Graves and the Lee Sin into rotating towards the red buffs.
And again, this grants you not only level 3 and then into what will be level 4, but also gives you the red buff at the end of your clear, which is really nice because it allows you to get out on the map and start ganking as best you can to help support a lot of your lanes to try to get some advantage somewhere. Actually, keep your eye right now on bottom side river. You got Bard and Lee Sin kind of hovering around mid lane, and especially with no heal, Wolfie might be in some trouble.
This is the duo roamers that we were talking about. A little bit of trouble over in the top lane, but still keeping an eye on this mid lane. Here comes the Magical Journey. Here comes the Goon Squad. Looking to finish off Wolfie. Wolfie starts running low, is able to put down the exhaust. The damage comes in, and there comes the auto. First blood goes out. Wolfie will be able to go down, just almost grabbing that first blood, but it's going to go over to Young.
Yeah, they throw the portal in out behind Wolfie. It's somehow thinking that that's gonna really solid play. I don't know how Cal actually grabbed initial kind of play because you have to throw that on the Lee Sin, who can bounce out from underneath the turret with that ward hop. But unfortunately, ends up being Cal who tanks it, and they give up first blood to the likes of Wolfie here. And yeah, you get the trade kill onto the Orianna, but first blood is a lot more valuable. Oh my goodness.
Look at this, Avi jumping in, almost getting caught out by the root. But Value should be able to stay safe, all regardless. Look at Avi, he's trying some sneaky shenanigans instead. Just going to go back into his jungle before he wreaks any havoc.
He's playing really high tempo right now, already having found 2 ganks across all things. He did burn the heal of Value, which is rather nice to see, so they have at least that tool. But this isn't Ezreal, so not particularly easy to try to capitalize against when you burn those summoners. Nonetheless, Avi's staying on this bottom side, going to a more vertical jungling style, but that's almost punishing Poppy more than anything at the moment.
See right there, the hook gonna land, gets a little bit of damage into Cal. This recall, Engo's gonna play this as much of a jerk as he can be, and rightfully so, just making sure to let that recall go as long as possible before he interrupted and just wastes as much time at the jump.
They're rather unfortunate, but you also have to feel for Engo because he's getting absolutely throttled by this chase right now from Niles, because Niles doesn't really have to do anything. He can sit there in range form and just kind of harass, and then even if he's in hammer form, as long as he doesn't use the Q, he is under no susceptibility from the Poppy to be brought down by the likes of the the W coming out, the steadfast presence. And so Poppy has very little agency in the laning phase up against something like the Jace, unless you're just super, super hard aggressive or get some really good gank pressure early and have some of the armor, or you get like Iceborne really quickly. It's very difficult as the Poppy to try to walk up on this Jace.
Now pushing in all the way towards his tower right here. You got to be careful because look who's waiting in the wings. It's going to be Iconic, and Iconic over the wall will be able to meet Cow. Gets caught by the binding, but still falls at the hands of Iconic. Looking to slow down Andy Bendy. Andy Bendy will get underneath the tower, but Iconic, playing the long game, will be rewarded with the kill.
Really impressive stuff. So this is like Shady actually understanding the matchup, but also Bard is a champion really well. As Bard, if you're playing super aggressive, playing really far up, you always play next to a wall because you can use it to portal out, and that's what Cal is doing. So right there, rather than Shady pulling him back towards his own tower and missing potentially, or even if he grabs him, he's still going to put him in rough range, he pulls him as far away from the portal as he possibly can, forces Cal's flash, and burns a lot of his time before Iconic's able to come in. Really well played from Shady, knowing where Cal was going to be moving his champion to be able to punish his positioning.
And look at the jungle right now. If he's clearing out Raptors, Iconic will be able to meet him there, and this means the pincer coming out because Wolf in the mid lane, getting some of that priority, misses the Sleepy Trouble bubble. If he able to walk away now, Cow will show up to try and even the odds. Here comes the hook, not going to go in, but the shockwave will go through. Iconic gets caught out by a V's resonating strike. Now Shady on the run. Wolfie starting to run low on mana here. Pulled underneath the tower. Wolfie will grab the kill of V. No! Iconic grabs it with the assist of the tower. Now Niles is showing up in the mid lane. He wants to grab one more. Tee up, knock him out of the park, and Niles grabs another one.
Oh my goodness, Maryville, they're reading a lot of these plays that are coming out. This is sort of what Radiance was capable of doing in Game 1, except it's more towards the lane, so I would suppose it's more of the game plan that we saw from Game 2 from them, where they're trying to get that lane pressure and exploit a lot of this. So you're trying to get Young mid ahead, trying to get Andy Bendy ahead, but it's just not working for them because Maryville is ready for it. And so far, Niles is dominating the solo one-on-one matchup against Go, much unlike what we saw previous in the week. Wolfie's playing it out of his mind right now in the mid lane across all members and getting kills for himself. This is a different beat. Okay. Oh.
Nice.
Nice.
That's the call right. That's the analytics. Nice.
Nice. It's really real nice right there. And Engo's feeling the harm of that one because he got shoved off the wave. A second wave is going to be crashing here, and Niles is going to be able to pick up two. But like this lead that Niles has is not growing, or it's not shrinking in terms of its expansion. It's actually expanding from its expansion. It's just going to get so much worse for Engo as this continues.
Oh, Maryville, they're sitting pretty right now, and they're just trying so hard. Radiance, they're trying to open up the plays. They're trying to find their way into the map, but Maryville's reading every single thing that Radiance wants to do. And Niles is now online as well, over towards that top side after getting that very, very beautiful snipe. So good luck being able to fight this one out. This is already looking really grim for Radiance, and I hate to say that this early, but that is the case. We were talking about it. It's the composition of Maryville, the draft of Maryville. It is a pretty one. Radiance, they have to make more plays faster, much sooner, to be able to turn their carries online for that late game, or else they just never turn online at all.
Yeah, and so far, Wolfie's done a good job of making sure he's in a good position. Value has not been aggressed against. He did get the one assist, but so far has been kind of just sitting in the laning phase exactly as you'd expect Value to do as kind of a solo champion. We haven't seen Shady, like he roamed a couple of times. We haven't seen him out on the map super hard yet, but that will happen very quickly. Now we get a play on Niles in the top lane. This should be a kill.
Straight for Niles. Dragon's Rage comes out. Iconic trying to defend, but if he will grab the kill and will grab a shutdown on top of that. That being said, it is a shutdown onto Elise, and it's not going to be the most impactful thing, but it's enough to buy a little bit of space over there, potentially to start up the Rift Herald, and yeah, V going to toss a Sonic Wave on it.
That he will, and then they have Cal up here. They have Young mid in the mid lane also to be able to push in Wolfie as best as possible, and it's Value and Shady making their way slowly into the enemy jungle. I don't think they're going to be able to roam up for this, so Avi, again, when he's playing around these neutral objectives, looks really good. He finds the individual outplay, he's able to find the kill onto Niles with combination and Engo, and then they capture this. This is the patience we saw in game number 1 from them, or the ability to group up in game number 1 we saw, that we haven't really seen from that point. They grab Rift Herald here, and they're even looking maybe for another play onto Niles in the top lane. All 4 members heading up there as Ezreal slowly begins to put damage into the bottom tower.
It'll be a good chunk, a good influx of gold, but it's going to be spread among 4 people, excuse me. And Shelly yet to be summoned, finally going to put him out there. It's a lot of resources committed though, and you're looking over in the bot side, it's going to be matched by Value, who's able to collect some plates of his own. Of course, that charge not finishing off the tower. Shelly's going to drop before that first brick does go down. So a very tense spot here, and the response is starting to come out of Maryville University as they're calling members over. There comes the hook. It's not going to land as Engo tries to run away from this one. Iconic will be coming out on the flanks, able to get that in and find the kill is going to be Shady. Shady's still looking for more, though. Out comes the hook, looking for Cow. Andy Bendy will be pushed in instead. No more kills to go through, but wait, Shady's still smelling more. He's coming over the wall. He wants Cow. There's going to be more death from below. It's yet to be reset and put on cooldown. So there we go. Shady dives on in. X marks the spot in Radiance. Continue the tempo. Shady in a rough spot, but there is Young coming up from the mid lane, able to get one return kill. Tempered Fate comes out. Wolf trying to defend Niles, but Niles gets caught by the Cosmic Finding. Eventually going to fall. Engo able to grab that kill. Death from below comes out once again. It's not going to find anything else as the shutdown is picked up from Engo. A response out of Radiance.
Yeah, really heavy overextension for Maryville there. Once the portal comes down from Bard and you get the one kill against the Poppy, you just take that trade. They forced so heavily onto the Rift Herald and onto this top tower that they've spent a lot of the resources and a lot of their time burning that. And look at even Value. I mean, he picked up plates on the bottom side, got himself a farm advantage. Like, this was a perfect situation to just kind of bail on it. Instead, Shady looks for a bit more, finds the one kill, which is rather nice, but buys enough time for the reset to come through on the side of Radiance, which gets their champions back in the fight and actually gives Young Mid a nice couple of shutdowns here, which isn't exactly what you want to do in an ideal situation.
So now state of the game, about 2K separating these squads in favor of Maryville University. Radiance trying very hard to get their footing back in. You can already see the builds coming through. You do have that Luden's Echo, but no first item completed for Andy Bendy. So still not in a spot to really take a lot of these team fights. I mean, Value can stay on those back lines over for Maryville and just queue away now that he has the Manamune. Not the same luxuries going over to Radiance, as they're definitely fighting an uphill battle.
They are. Still have to worry about all the damage coming through it. Even in individual lanes, I don't think they're quite in the same spot. Thankfully, Engo finally has some armor, has a good amount of health pool to work with, so no longer will Niles probably just bully him completely out of the lane like we'd seen before. Young Mid actually really good positioning from Wolfie to find that bubble and forces out the cleanse from Young Mid.
Yeah, great there. Just playing around, dancing all over the minions. Finds the bubble, forces out the cleanse, and on top of that is able to pick up a cleanse of his own now that was burned.
It does. Not super useful, it's the Orianna, but at minimum it's a summoner spell to grab, and you can activate it at any time for a little bit of extra damage or just some move speed if you absolutely wanted to. So really good stuff from Wolfie. Finding that kind of individual outplay. You don't usually see a ton of those from him during the laning phase especially, but really well played on the Young Mid, burning that cleanse, now susceptible to ganks.
Nice. Now Young caught out. Out comes Tempered Fate, but no kill to go through. Still a lot of damage being punished, but still no kill. You didn't really need the kill, though. The real objective there is just setting up for the Drake that's going to spawn in just a moment.
100%. You're able to get more pressure for Niles top lane. Avi is drawn to the bottom side out of fear of a gank coming through. Young Mid had plenty of damage on him before that play had actually come through, and so Cal had to block all of those skill shots, which dropped Cal's health as well. So now there is no play to come through from these two. Niles actually taken on the receiving end of a not fantastic trade. Did put some good damage into Poppy, though, so Engo not going to be able to do much here.
Yeah, Engo's starting to return. I mean, he does have the Chain Vest as well as the Ninja Tabby, so he has the armor to take on a lot of the barrage that's going on from Niles. And of course, Niles does go for that more expensive build of the Trinity Force, so it's going to be a while before Niles can start turning on and start doing that damage onto Engo, instead opting for more of a Black Cleaver build this time.
Yeah, wanting the armor shred and the movement speed against Engo is really good. And now Value in an individual 1v2 here could be in a rough situation. Has flash still, but not even going to burn it. Really good resolve there. Oh!
You feel the tension coming out of Wolfie. Cow taking a huge chunk of damage right there, but it's going to be Niles over on the top side, taking a tower. First brick of the game over to Niles and Shady.
They're really well played. Nice roam from Shady. Again, getting him out on the map is a big reason why they like to play this fight, because it's one of the best things that Shady likes to do. He gets up the top side, puts some pressure onto Engo, and helps out Niles with that top lane take. Gets that first tower on top side. Really important stuff. And again, Value goes to solo lane, doesn't get punished for it. Shady gets to get out and roam, puts Niles ahead. Like, this is just classic Maryville strategy.
And you do got a good setup coming out from Radiance all meanwhile. Getting a little bit of punishment though, but this from Golden, Wolfie almost caught out. Able to flash away using his own flash as the shockwave goes out. It's not really going to find much, but Radiance are able to push away Maryville University towards the side of the river. Unfortunately for them, there's no dragon to be seen.
Yeah, it's not up for another 3 minutes, which is unfortunate. You do capture bottom lane river priority, so now Avi and Cal can roam about a little bit more easily, especially into the likes of the solo lane for value, or maybe Wolfie out in the mid lane. But still, nothing really came about from that, and even top lane, however, wasn't really pushed by Engo by any standard because Iconic wasn't needed to hold that bottom river play. So really, really good stuff. Once again, Maryville not falling bait to anything, and Shady just fishing for these hooks right now.
Ooh, able to get it. There comes the blind, and as well as a lot of damage coming out of Wolfie. Young starts to run low, so does Cal. Slammed up against the wall, Engo is able to find Niles as Niles looks to jump back in, but gets blocked by the steadfast presence. The objective there for Maryville was just to get control of the Rift Herald, be able to grab that neutral. What they're able to get as well as a turret going down over in the bottom side. Andy Bendy's gonna grab that, and a V almost falling down to those paddle stars. That is the cringe I feel when I see the Zoe.
Yeah, it actually dropped the redemption, which would have killed him, and it forced out Avi's flash, and not to be able to have that to set up any sort of insec or kick of any kind for the most part. This is just pure dominance coming out from Maryville. They're not winning the fights that they're forcing, but they're getting a lot of resources, health bars, abilities, cooldowns, summoner spells, things of that sort. And as they do so, they're also claiming neutral objectives, be it dragons, be it rift heralds, things of that sort, all off the back of some good pressure from Shady and some really good lane play so far from the solo team.
There comes the shockwave. Wolfie looking to play fade a little bit here as he runs into the face of Young, looking to just outplay that ball control as best as he can. Shady showing up in the mid lane as well, gets a ball as his welcome gift. Engo reaching a little bit of CS, unfortunately slams against a minion instead of Niles. But yeah, you're seeing it right now. It's a very, very slow matchup that's starting to get brought in. It's just Radiance trying to stop the bleeding. That's the key fact right here. So you can stop that gold lead from growing and get to the end game.
That you are. And Engo, after the early game deficit isn't really doing too bad, so now Niles isn't likely going to be able to get a solo kill. There is a Rift Herald currently sitting in the pocket of Iconic, which is going to be a really important thing. Now, Cal, look for the 1v1. Here is actually... Cal!
Interesting spot right there, but here comes Shady, able to bring the death from below. It's going to be two going down, one each. Value forced to arcade shift to get back out, but look at the flanks because it's going to be Iconic looking to join the battle over towards the mid lane. Instead, choosing to back off because he doesn't like his odds in this one. A pincer movement could come out from a V all meanwhile, but that is going to be the end of the fight right there. Just a 1-for-1 exchange to wrap it up.
I remember back when I first started playing this game, and Bard was like the most hated champion, or just like perceived as one of the weakest. And that right there is the reason why. The double-edged sword of the ultimate, where like in the right situation, sets up your team perfectly, can deny big ultimate, can stop somebody from just pounding through a fight, or sets up your team really well. In the wrong situation, it ruins your opportunity to take advantage of a kill that was set up so well by Cal for Avi to be able to clean up. So it was Cal's making and his destruction of the play. That's kind of sad to watch.
Yeah, the El Clasico Bard. See that special moment with Tempered Fate. 10 seconds until Mountain Drake spawns. And that Tempered Fate not going to be available for that Mountain Drake. You are going to have the Shockwave up and good to go, but as it comes to tools over for Maryville University, they got everything they need to start taking these fights, albeit minus Shady having his death from below.
Yeah, that's a pretty big cooldown, being able to execute somebody, but it's coming up back up rather quickly. They're actually sieging up on mid lane here to try to pull a little bit of pressure. There's a flank coming around from Cal, though, which is rather big, alongside Ingo, so they're going to be looking for a fight as they rotate to River.
Tempered Fate's coming back up, and they're looking to get the catch. That's exactly what they're going to do as they get it onto Wolfie. Now out comes the collateral damage, looking to jump onto Young. A brilliant play to come out of Niles as he flashes forwards, grabs the kill, will fall ultimately to Andy Bendy. Now Value going to be on the run, throwing the Mystic shots backward as the hook's going to land onto Andy Bendy. Avi longs to jump in and help out his bot lane. Make sure they don't crumble at the hands of Maryville University. Mystic shots coming in. Shady looking very carefully to find this hook, and he grabs it on to Engo. Andy Bendy, too far low, death from below, gonna whiff. Engo, not much else where he can go, but sends Iconic to the grave with him. And that is going to be a 2-for-3 exchange so far in favor of Radiance. That might completely turn around now as Maryville University's Value wants to find that kill, wants to find that pick. There's a Sonic Wave. You're waiting for it. Fingers crossed. It will not go through. A very crazy fight to come out of both of these squads.
And right now, in this exact instant, Shady and Value are low, but not obscenely low, especially for the range that they have. Combine that with the fact that Avi is up, this makes it a very precarious Dragon. Oh my goodness. Oh! No start!
No! Andy, not like this. Zoe! Zoe, go to hell, damn it! Here come the paddle stars. Just, you know, I felt that. I feel so much for Andy Bendy. Raise him a GoFundMe after that one.
It's even worse because you're like, okay, like you want to feel good about Wolfie finding like this amazing angle on the paddle star to sneak it around Cal and hit Andy Bendy, but I can't help but feel bad for Andy Bendy just getting absolutely destroyed in one paddle star like that.
Two-shot brush comes in,
right.
And it's another paddle star. Wolfie, just an absolutely beautiful marksman in the truest term of the word, truest form of the word, excuse me, as the shockwave goes out, grabbing Niles. Complete control of the rift, conceded. Maryville University control it off the back of Wolfie.
And what we were waiting for last game from Young Mid Zoe is what we're seeing from Wolfie Zoe in this game. Just these massive bubbles, massive battle stars to find picks onto champions, drive them out of fights, things of that sort, all over the place. And because of that, they're having a lot of success. And again, once Wolfie really starts to get more damage, he has the Oblivion Orb, but more AP is soon to come. The Fate might be coming. Oh, Andy, no.
He just got back. Why do you gotta do him like that?
Poor Andy, man. He thinks his game is in grayscale right now. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah, very, very unfortunate. Now, fight bring it over towards the bot side. Niles looking to try and take it to Engo. Still stuck on the poor deaths of Andy Bendy, but this fight might bring another death for us as Niles slowly chipping away at Engo. Getting that damage in. A brilliant use of the ult to stop the damage from Niles. And Engo might have turned it around, waiting for that pop. Almost the auto throw. They killed each other in the 1v1.
The minions ruin the pure 1v1 because I think Niles ends up with that as long as they don't come through. But Wolfie also gets picked off on this topside fight right here. Really, really important stuff. I think it was also Young Mid that picks up that kill. Another really big thing, being able to grab that Zoe, does give them a bit more control on the map. My lord, look at the map, like the warding from Maryville. Look where their wards are. It's the entire jungle of Radiance is lit. Not even like it's not even a Christmas tree at this point. This is just a sun.
Oh, and proper when you're against a team like Radiance, but now V gets pulled in, a lot of punishment going in as the magical journey will be able to take a V over to safety. Shockwave gonna go wide though, and Radiance on full retreat.
All right, I think finally we're gonna get, okay, Shady's gonna make me like maybe Action's gonna calm down here, but apparently we're gonna see that. All right, Young Mid also, I'm gonna call this right now. If anyone sees it again, tell me. If Young Mid ults and Iconic just like ease out of it one more time, I'm gonna lose my mind anyway. It doesn't even matter.
Shady! He's on the hunt. Engo's caught out now. Value's just happy to auto away. Collect the paychecks now. Maryville University, at this rate, they booked that plane ticket straight to the finals. Man, it's a bullet train. It's a rocket even.
They're just having fun right now, it seems like. Like, Shady's playing one of the champions that I know he plays so well, and he doesn't get to play it often, but when he does, he goes all over the map, and he's just a constant nuisance for the enemy team, and you see why. If he is near you, you get hooked or you die. Something like that is bound to happen because he's just so good at the champion, especially when you pair it with Niles, when he's able to hit that big shock blast, when you hit it with Wolfie, and you pair it with that big paddle star or anything of the sort, that follow-up damage is securing kill after kill after kill, and they just keep getting proxied off one by one, and no map pressure can come out from Radiance because of it.
Yeah, that really has been the story, just one by one by one. A lot of those ones being Andy Bendy, unfortunately, in the last couple of minutes. That's the threat now, when we're at this stage of the game, and when Maryville University are able to get that amount of vision that we saw earlier, that son of a control ward that you were talking about. That's a Zoe's wet dream right there. The Sleepy Trouble Bubble is doing extra work in that case.
Oh yeah, when you're able to see anybody anywhere in the jungle at any time, all you have to do is pick the angle and throw the bubble out, and if they get hit, they die immediately, which is just rough to think about. Not to mention, like, Andy Bendy's standing pretty far up in the lane sometimes, and Cal isn't really able to do much, because Cal can't tank to the amount that you would want to be able to stop a Paddle Star from just destroying somebody. So if he stands in the way, he's going to lose 75% of his health bar as well. As you see, Cal's got 7 deaths as well, because he's getting picked on just as much as Andy Bendy is.
Oh, look at Shady right here, just, as you say, picking on Cal once again. But the big thing is he's doing it absolutely fearlessly. There's no one around that could have backed up Shady there, but he feels that confident that Radiance are just too afraid, that they don't have enough vision control to comfortably go after anyone who might be alone.
Yeah, they're putting a lot of vision, I will note, on the top side of the map here, which has been big, because they, of course, they can go for Baron at any time, but they have none on bottom side for Dragon, and Niles, you know, gets put in the wall by Engo, but Iconic's here to bail him out a little bit.
Yeah, this is going to be the long run for Engo. He does have the steadfast presence off cooldown, so it is going to give him that movement speed boost.
Oh,
and pop the ultimate, just going to helicopter away. Swoosh, 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 and now Cal tries to find the Cosmic Bite. You're not going to get that, but here comes the Shockwave as the Tempered Fate goes out. Only going to find it onto Niles. Cal trying to get in a better position. Slammed against the wall. Engo will find it onto Niles. Niles with the chain of CC onto him. Flashes away, able to stay alive, but Wolfie over the wall finds a Paddle Star. Gonna look for more. Here comes another Paddle Star. Not able to land. Yes, it does. It disintegrates Engo. And Value over the wall. Another challenger has appeared. Cal, the only one to survive. And there he goes. Death from below. Maryville with the clean ace.
Pretty much every tool for team fighting from Radiance was burnt right there, and able to get a good amount of damage. I thought their fight actually wasn't looking horrible. I thought maybe they'd break away, but the entire team of Maryville is throwing spells at them from so many angles, they just can't keep track of it. It's a Paddle Star, it's a Mystic Shot, it's a Q coming from Graves, and all coming from Graves, a hook coming from Shady, it's Qs and Shock Blast and Hammers coming from James. They just can't focus on anybody fast enough, because the damage isn't there for Youngkin and anybody to just kill someone outright. I know I saw Shockwave and Infernal Moonlight Vigil hit during that fight, and still everyone's standing with the majority of their health.
I mean, that's the story of this game.
Yeah.
That's it. Every single direction you should be afraid of. This is like jump scare League of Legends that's coming out. These Paddle Stars, these Mystic Shots, even Pike, you get the scary music going on when you're in low health and he's nearby. So yeah, this is a horror story coming out for Radiance, and they just can't seem to wake up from it.
Yeah, I want to see if maybe next time if we can get just like a full capture of Shady, if Joe's capable of putting the Jaws theme on, just so we can wait and watch as he just swallows up Andy Bendy or Cal again with a full rotation.
Yeah, we'll get that edit. We'll get that. And Joe confirmed it. He said he's going to edit that for us. Keep him to his word as the fight continues. Going over to this top side, Niles looking to take the 1v1 with Engo, but it's going to be Cal showing up. Wolfie grabbing Andy Bendy once again. Leave the poor man alone. Niles now in a 1v3. Trying to outplay this one. Gets Dragon's Raged away. Will fall down, but look at the mid lane. There's a swarm of Maryville looking to just destroy your inhibitors.
See, this is all too familiar a sight. Is usually when plays like this happen, when they put run compositions like this, Niles loves to just attract attention from everybody across the map. So he'll get 3-man, 4-man sometimes, and then the rest of the map is just falling to pieces. The team just has no other response. They get a kill against Niles, that's great, but now you're losing mid inhibitor. You're probably going to get aggressed against a bot inhibitor as well. Not to mention, this team still has a ridiculous amount of poke with Ezreal and Zoe alive, so you have to be very afraid, especially since Shady has the ultimate available as well.
Get a hashtag trending. Hashtag leave Andy Bendy alone. Cow 2 at that rate. Oh, the true shot! Oh, what a way to go. You didn't even see your enemy. You had no response. It was just poke, 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 poke. And Maryville University, they're going to continue that focus. They're going to find another kill onto Young, marching into the base of Radiance. They're going to get absolutely destroyed. Knocked into the air will be Shady. He's going to be able to make a quick re-entrance. There comes the Dragon's Rage. They're able to find a pick onto Value. Will it be enough, though? I believe the answer is going to be no, because take a look at this. There is an eclipse on the rip right now. The Radiant Sun is blocked out in Maryville University. They're taking out one of NA Amateurs Titans, and Radiance booking their tickets to the finals.
What a game. You go back to the beginning of the series, game number 1, and Maryville looked ridiculously off kilter. They did not look like themselves. They didn't look like they had competition at all. And here we come into game 2, game 3, game 4, and it looked like they improved every single game. They came up with new picks. They came up with new strategies. They played the champions that they love to play, and they looked so comfortable finally not picking a full game series against the likes of Radiance.
Yeah, you doubted the Graves. It showed up. Iconic finally made it work, but that technically wasn't the hero of the story. The one that really pops out to me is just Wolfie, man. Hold on, I gotta look at the damage done real quick. Wolf, oh god. 22k leagues above anyone on Radiance, only really being matched by Value, who's at 21k. That says it all right there. That is some vicious, disgusting, please remove it from the game poke.
When you pick low-range compositions into Ezreal and Zoe, this is bound to happen. I knew coming in, we knew coming in, the early game is always there for Radiance. That's what they were rolling with pretty much all series, and especially in this game. If you don't get that early game rolling, if your carries aren't actually getting up into their items, making those break points, you're not going to find success. And that came to spades on that bottom side fight. Again, a full Moonlight Vigil and a full Shockwave hit onto this team, and it meant nothing, and you just got picked apart by all the individual champions from Maryville.
I mean, that's how far behind they really were. Niall's able to steal away that Jace, and then everyone else, the poke homies, pretty much. We've seen it. We saw a snipe from Value. We saw a snipe from Niles. We saw a snipe from Wolfie. Everyone was getting snipe kills on this composition.
It was truly the marksman composition coming through from the side of Maryville, and I can appreciate once again that it looked like they were playing to their style. You don't usually see Jace and things like Pyke, things like Zoe come out, especially not in the same draft. But when this team gets comfort and they aren't just getting absolutely rolled in the early game, you see the kind of damage they can do. They really are a top competitor among all people. And against Radiance, again, you throw game 1 out the window. This is one of the most convincing series I've seen them play all season.
Yeah, and on that, we have pretty much set the stage for finals. Over on stream number 2, it did conclude Frostfire getting that 3-1 win. So that means it's right there. We have our finals matchup. Maryville University versus Frostfire, and that will be taking place next week. How hype are you for that?
Extremely. I think Frostfire is one of the most underrepresented teams in all of Scouting Grounds, and getting to see them and their very unique style against a team like Maryville, who's coming out with not just a definitive style, but has already been so well covered across all of Scouting Grounds, it gives some perspective because Frostfire is still competing to try to break into that the end game playoffs. Maryville, I'm not going to say they're definitively in at this moment right now, but certainly they're very heavily postured and very favored to get into that playoff. So seeing these teams clash in the finals is bound to be a fantastic matchup.
It is definitely bound to be a fantastic one. If you want to see that, be sure to tune in next week to catch our grand finals of Maryville University versus Frostfire. But for the casting desk, we're going to start wrapping it up right here. First of all, big shout out to stream number 2, Cubby and Lemons, doing an excellent cast, and Kangas on production. Shout out to our streamer over here in Roundo Joe. I've been your caster for the day, Eric Deserix Beltran, followed by my co-caster, Dean Rebel Fox Merrick. I want to thank you guys for joining us this night, and we'll see you again next week on Risen Esports Champions League Playoffs.